peace upon his loyal ground will all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. In 1861, hurrah, hurrah, that was when the war begun, hurrah, hurrah. In 1862, both sides were falling to it, we'll all drink stone wine when Johnny comes marching home. In 1863, hurrah, hurrah, Old Navy ended slavery, hurrah, hurrah. In 1863, Old Navy ended slavery, and we'll all drink stone wine when Johnny comes marching home. In 1864, hurrah, hurrah, in Culp with 500,000 more, hurrah, hurrah. In 1865, they talked rebellion strife, and we'll all drink stone wine when Johnny comes marching home.
Museum of History Studios.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this first live Ask A Gettysburg guide ever, ladies and gentlemen, ever. We are talking today about the world-famous Iron Brigade. You could also pick up a lovely T-shirt, as you saw in the thumbnail, several different designs about the Iron Brigade. On our T-shirt shop, which is addressinggettysburg.com/shop. And usually we get right into the Ask A Guides, but since this is our first live one, we're going to just give you a little housekeeping here. Here's how it's going to go. As you might see, Michael Six Questions Lentz did a $10 super chat, and he said, what artillery battery is most commonly associated with the Iron Brigade, and did they draw from the ranks of the brigade to replace losses? Now, I bet you he knows the answer to that already, but we're going to ask that once we get into things. But that is how your comment or question or analysis or thought or whatever on the Battle of Gettysburg, in this particular case, the Iron Brigade in the Battle of Gettysburg, is going to be read on the air. That money is actually going to help feed the crew and our guests because they come to do these shows after work. And it's dinner time, and so I said, I will buy you dinner, but we're not a $1 million organization here, so any bit of help towards that will be greatly appreciated. So that's how you do it there. Now, if you don't want to pay, if you want to continue to freeload, that is fine. That is fine. That is your right as an American. But you want to ask a question, you have to call 717-420-1978. To make it easy on us, we're going to take the calls while after the commercial break. So when we get to the commercial break, that's your cue to call in and get in the queue, and we will take your questions there. Of course, there are pre-submitted questions by our patrons over at patreon.com/Addressing Gettysburg. That is a wonderful way to support the show. And that is all I'm going to bug you with all that stuff there now, right? I think that's good enough. Thank you for watching. Now, let's get to the purpose of this show. Today's show is about the Iron Brigade. Everybody loves the Iron Brigade. Oh, it is so fascinating. The Iron Brigade. Oh, by the way, sorry, one more thing. That $10 super chat that Six Questions sent in, the super chat has to be $10 or more. But I will read this one here from Hart's Horn Guy. He said, could 100 Iron Brigade soldiers take on one guerrilla? And that is a great question. But we'll get to that later on. Larry Korczyk is here with us today. Larry, you are an Iron Brigade enthusiast.
I am an Iron Brigade enthusiast, yes.
But
please don't attach the word expert to me.
Oh, all right.
Okay?
Then I will not.
I do not like the word expert attached to me.
Oh, okay.
But I am a strong enthusiast. I like the way you put that.
Okay, good. Good.
And I'd also like to say, you put a lot of pressure on me here.
Why is that?
First live show.
I know.
I mean, come on.
I know.
lot of pressure.
Hey, listen, Larry. They said, "Who do you want for your first live show?" I said, "You might as well go with the best." We'll go with
Well, I
Larry.
appreciate
Okay.
that. I appreciate
And
that.
in the back there, operating the cameras, is our buddy Court Micker. Hello, Court. How are you?
Hello, Matthew. I'm
Court
well.
is
How are
a
you?
is a Gettysburg and history enthusiast in general, and he will throw his 2 cents in as well. Your mic is always open, Court, so you're welcome to speak.
Thank you.
Okay, so Iron Brigade. Let's
Yes.
get talking about them.
Okay, let's go.
All right.
I'm ready, I hope.
The Battle of Gettysburg was their first battle ever, right?
No.
Oh,
No.
This is interesting. Okay.
No.
Well, why don't you start us off with a little history of the
Well,
Iron Brigade?
the Iron Brigade essentially is formed in August of 1861, and that's when the 3 Wisconsin regiments, the 2nd, 6th, and 7th, will have the 19th Indiana added to them to form a brigade. Okay?
Okay.
Their first battle is going to be 2nd Manassas. That's going to be their first battle. But after they're formed in 1861, they initially become attached to the corps of Irvin McDowell and his Army of the Rappahannock. And later on, of course, the Army of the Rappahannock, which will be the first corps of the Army of Virginia under John Pope. So they're not going to fight with the Army of the Potomac until later in the war. Okay? First with Irvin McDowell, then they'll be attached to the Army of Virginia. And they will not participate in the Peninsula Campaign. They're not going to be at the Peninsula. They're going to be in Fredericksburg during the Peninsula Campaign with Irvin McDowell's Army of the Rappahannock. Okay, their first battle would really essentially be the Battle of the Bronner Farm,
Okay.
just prior to the Battle of 2nd Manassas in August of 1862.
It's quite a trial by fire.
Yeah,
Second
absolutely.
Manassas, right?
Yeah, well, the Bronner Farm in particular. I mean, at one time, the Iron Brigade, along with the division of Rufus King, is marching down the Warrenton Road, and they're going to be brought under fire by the division of Stonewall Jackson. And they're going to stand toe-to-toe for a better part of quite some time, toe-to-toe with the division of Stonewall Jackson.
That's some welcoming committee.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Right?
it is. Yes, it is. And they will suffer very heavy losses, but they will account for themselves quite well at the Battle of the Bronner Farm. And then, of course, soon thereafter is going to be the Battle of 2nd Manassas.
Now, you said at this point, there are the 3 Wisconsin
Right.
regiments and the 19th.
And the 19th Indiana.
Okay, so it's a 4-regiment brigade at this point.
Right.
Okay.
And what's interesting, note, is that at one point there was thoughts of adding the 5th Wisconsin with the 2nd, 6th, and 7th, making an all-Wisconsin brigade. But for some reason, that did not happen, and they added the 19th Indiana.
So, prior to being brigaded together, did any of those regiments see combat elsewhere, or is this everybody's first time?
The Battle of the Bronner Farm is really their introduction to battle.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't see any action really at all at Fredericksburg, in occupation of Fredericksburg, while McClellan is battling on the peninsula.
Okay, so it's not that they're new to the service. It's just their service has not led them to a battlefield.
You might say
per
they
se.
have not seen the elephant.
They
to
have
date.
not seen the elephant.
Right, they have
yes,
not
okay.
seen the elephant to date.
Okay,
Yeah.
so second now then I guess the next thing we have is Antietam.
Antietam.
So what
which
happens
is
there?
really going to be quite a bloodbath for both armies, of course.
Sure.
Resulting in over those 23,000 casualties. But the Iron Brigade on the morning of September 17th will fight in that cornfield. The brigade will fight in that cornfield, and they're going to just take terrible
They
losses.
have great luck from the first battle there.
Yeah,
don't they?
absolutely.
Just they're in all the right places.
Yeah, the Bronner Farm was an absolute brawl, and then, of course, the follow-up is the Battle of Antietam, the bloodiest battle in American history.
Now, so go back to 2nd Manassas real quick.
Yeah.
What are they numbering at this point?
Probably a brigade of less than 2,000. Probably what their ranks are about now, 1,800 and
Okay.
so forth. Yeah.
And so the losses that they have had up to that point have been disease like everybody else.
Mostly disease,
Yeah,
of
okay.
course. Yeah.
Okay, so then Antietam, cornfield.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
How many men did they lose at South Mountain before they took the hits in the cornfield?
Yeah, I don't know what the exact figures are. South Mountain prior to Antietam?
Yeah.
They took fairly substantial losses. Of course, they're going to charge up the mountain, up South Mountain. And, of course, who's going to be watching them at one point is General George McClellan himself. And he would turn to one of his officers and say, "Who are these men? They must be made of iron."
That's
they
how it
fight.
happened.
And that's where they received their moniker, at the Battle of South Mountain.
Okay.
But they did take significant losses at the Battle of South Mountain, definitely. And then, of course, the next 2 days later, they're at the Battle of Antietam and the bloodbath of Antietam.
And then I guess the next big one would be Fredericksburg. So how'd they do there?
Well, what's going to happen after the Battle of Antietam with the substantial losses that the brigade had suffered at the Battle of Antietam, the brigade commander, General John Gibbon, will request a new regiment to help fill the ranks. And he specifically asked for an all-Western regiment. He wants a regiment from the West. And eventually the 24th Michigan is added to the brigade. And their first battle will be at the Battle of Fredericksburg in December of 1862.
So let me jump in with 6 questions. Question here: what artillery battery is most commonly associated with the Iron Brigade, and did they draw from the ranks of the brigade to replace losses? I'm not sure. Does he mean in general or at Gettysburg?
Oh, well, probably every battle.
Okay.
I mean, that's going to be Lieutenant Stewart, Battery B. They are associated with the Iron Brigade. And at Antietam, they're going to suffer. The battery will suffer, fairly heavy losses for a battery. And oftentimes, quite often, when the ranks were depleted, infantrymen were drafted to fill the ranks.
So, I guess they must have seen guns being operated enough to know how to. How do you just pull somebody?
It's always a problem when you're adding infantrymen to operate a battery because they don't necessarily know the firing sequence. So there could be problems, without a doubt.
It's not like, maybe I'm assuming something stupid here, but maybe would it have been that they would have had an entire gun crew be infantrymen with no artillerymen as guides? I
don't think you'd ever see that.
Right.
You're going to have some. You're going to have some cannoneers.
Yeah.
Operating the gun.
So they just needed bodies that could follow direction.
And in fact, it may have just been the number 5 man. What's the number 5 man do on a battery crew? He's the soldier who's bringing the ammunition forward after it's been prepared at the limber chest and delivering it to the number 2 man.
Right.
And
so okay. Something easy.
Pretty easy job to do.
They're not commanding a battery.
Yeah. No, they're not commanding a battery. No, not at all.
Okay. So.
I should mention at the Battle of Fredericksburg. When they're stationed in Fredericksburg with Irvin McDowell's Army of the Rappahannock, that is where General John Gibbon will order them to purchase the uniform that they'll become famous for wearing. The famous black hat.
Okay.
The white leggings, the frock coat. Yeah, but they were ordered to.
They were ordered to
purchase them themselves. Yeah,
I bet that was expensive.
Yeah, they're taking them out of their monthly pay. Yeah,
oh man!
Yeah.
But he wanted them to look good.
Well, he wanted to instill discipline within the ranks. He recognized that these men from the West were somewhat ill-disciplined, but they were good raw material, and he figured all I need to do is instill discipline, drill them consistently and constantly, and they'll become good soldiers, which they obviously did.
Now that you're on the uniform, this is kind of skipping around here, but Matthew Gillespie wants to know, why did the Iron Brigade adopt the Maltese cross design on their monuments?
Well, the Maltese cross is what's going to be what General Joseph Hooker is going to do prior to the Battle of Chancellorsville. He's going to assign each and every of the 7 Army Corps in the Army of the Potomac a specific symbol that represent them. So it's not the Iron Brigade that chose the Maltese Cross. It was assigned to them by General Joseph Hooker, and they just happened to get the Maltese Cross.
So the brigades got the symbols
No, it's the
too?
Corps. It's the Corps that is assigned the Corps symbol, but of course, each and every soldier in the Corps, what they would do, they would wear that symbol on the top of their hat.
Right.
It fosters communication and identification.
But I don't think that's what he's talking about.
What's he talking
He's
about?
talking about maybe it's not the Maltese Cross. What is that?
It's not quite.
What is it?
It's the design. It has the
like the fireman's.
It looks more like a fireman's badge.
That's the Maltese Cross.
That is the Maltese Cross?
That is the Maltese Cross.
I think it's a Maltese Cross, but not the 5th Corps Maltese Cross.
Right, because I was going to say the
That's
5th Corps is the
four-sided.
So what we're talking about, it looks like like the fireman's. It's not a badge.
It looks like somewhat like a fireman's badge.
Yeah,
I have a picture of it, I think.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah. There's different overall. There's different designs.
Yeah.
But overall, the Maltese Cross is what's assigned to the 5th Corps. There's
that
the Maltese
Court's
Cross.
showing
That's
it up
the
on
Maltese
the
Cross.
Oh, that is the Maltese
Yeah,
Cross.
that's definitely the Maltese Cross. Yeah.
It's like a cross doing jumping jacks.
Yeah, it's not. It's not like the 6th. It's not like the 6th Corps that has the Greek cross.
Right.
It's the Maltese.
Maltese
cross.
cross.
That's it right
Okay.
there. Yeah, absolutely.
So that would have, but that's different than the 5th Corps Maltese Cross.
That is.
No.
Oh,
Pull up the 5th Corps Maltese Cross, Court.
Yep.
We have to get this right, Larry.
I see what. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I see where we're going. No,
Right.
that is the specific design for the brigade.
For the brigade,
For
right?
the brigade.
right.
I'm sorry.
Do we know
yeah.
where they got that from?
I don't know that.
Okay.
No, I do not know that. Yeah.
It's clever
Yeah,
though.
the Maltese
It's
Cross
like
is the 5th Corps, correct?
one thing for each regiment.
Right,
you know.
right. Whereas the 1st Corps, of which they belong, is the
disc. Yeah.
the disc,
The circle.
or the circle, or the moon, the full moon. Yeah.
Yes.
So anyone watching it.
There you go. Yeah.
There's
yeah.
the Maltese Cross of the 5th Corps, right.
Or the Iron Cross,
or
as
the
some might call it.
Iron Cross of
Yeah.
the Wisconsin boys. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Or the Iron Brigade.
Let's see here. A Cup Plays. Thank you for the $25. He says, "Help feed the people. Always enjoy when I get the chance to listen to you. Thank you very much, sir." Okay, so continue on with the story here. I'm going to pepper these in.
Of course, we've got their first battle with the 24th Michigan, and that is at the Battle of Fredericksburg. And I've got one quote here from the commanding officer of the 24th Michigan. He would say, "Steady, men, steady. Those boys from Wisconsin are watching you." So keep in mind, when the 24th Michigan is added to the brigade, they've got to prove themselves. They're an unproven regiment. And the Wisconsin boys are watching them under fire for the first time at the Battle of Fredericksburg, particularly artillery fire. Yeah. And they did weather the artillery fire well and performed well.
But they weren't in the assault on Marie's Heights?
No, they weren't.
Right.
No, they did not assault Marie's Heights.
So they were, where were they? Further down? To the left?
Yeah, they were actually, for the better part, they were held in reserve.
Okay.
They didn't see extensive action.
Right.
Fighting against the Confederate infantry, of course.
So they lucked out
They're
on that
just going to
one.
be subjected to the artillery fire.
Yeah. That's all.
Yeah, that's all.
Just the
That's
artillery.
all.
Okay, so then during so what corps are they in at Fredericksburg? In 1862, are they in the same corps?
They are, at this point, they're in the Army of the Potomac. They're in the 1st Corps.
In the 1st Corps, okay. So that's not going to change.
No, that's not going to change.
All right, but other things do change in the Army during the winter when Hooker takes over and he implements all these changes.
Yeah.
How do any of them affect the Iron Brigade, if anything?
Not much at all. They're still going to remain in the 1st Corps for the Battle of Chancellorsville. At Chancellorsville, once again, the Iron Brigade and the better part of the 1st Corps is going to be held in reserve. General John Reynolds is not going to see much action with his corps. So they don't not take near the heavy losses that they did at Antietam and eventually at Gettysburg, of course.
So you mentioned Gibbon was their commander.
Right.
So is it Gibbon and then Meredith, or is there someone in between?
Yeah, it's going to be General John Gibbon. He'll be their commander at Antietam and moving forward. But eventually at Fredericksburg, he moves up to division command. All right. And who takes command of the brigade is General Solomon Meredith,
Okay.
the one-time commander of the 19th Indiana.
Ah, okay.
Now, General John Gibbon was adamantly opposed to Meredith taking command of the brigade.
Oh, why is that?
Well, believe it or not, at the Battle of Fredericksburg, Meredith was actually arrested at one point for misbehavior under fire. He was arrested at one point. Now, the thing with Solomon Meredith, he has no military education. He's not a West Point graduate. He's a newspaper man. He's a politician. And he has a very strong relationship with Governor Morton of Indiana. So there's some political intrigue that's going to get him to command the brigade. But General Gibbon is not happy. Who was his choice? He wanted General Lysander Cutler.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because at one point Cutler did command the brigade before Gibbon took over. He commanded the brigade for just a little while.
As a colonel.
And yeah, as a
Okay.
colonel.
What was his regiment?
He came from the 6th Wisconsin.
Okay.
He was the colonel of the
Okay.
He was the colonel of the 6th Wisconsin.
All right, so he had temporary command of the
Took
brigade.
temporary command. He performed well. He's a solid officer.
Right.
Okay.
But he gets his own brigade.
He gets his own. Well, when Meredith is given the brigade command of the Iron Brigade, he's given the brigade of those Pennsylvania and New York boys.
Now, when was that? I don't know if you said that or not.
Let's see. That's probably going to be. I'm trying to think if it was after or before Chancellorsville. Well, it had to be before Chancellorsville.
Okay.
Easily, yeah.
Because Meredith is in command.
Meredith
then.
is command of that Chancellorsville, yeah.
All right, so Chancellorsville, they kind of sit it out.
They're in reserve.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
they don't see a
nothing.
lot of action, no.
But then the big show,
Gettysburg. Right,
Gettysburg.
absolutely.
The one that we love the most.
Yeah.
And so get us to Gettysburg here.
Well, on the morning of July 1st, the Iron Brigade is in bivouac about 6 miles south of Gettysburg, along Marsh Creek.
Mm-hmm.
You can go and see the location today.
Do we know where it is?
Yeah, we have the modern bridge that crosses Marsh Creek about 6 miles south of Gettysburg. And there's
On the Emmitsburg Road?
On the Emmitsburg Road.
Oh, I
straight
know
down
exactly where it is.
Emmitsburg.
Right below the
You got
barn
bridge
resort.
right. You got the
Yes.
bridge that crosses. You got all that flat ground.
Yeah.
To the north and south side. That's where the Iron Brigade is going to be in position.
Okay.
Right in there. They'll be in bivouac there.
All right, so that's where they are when they wake
That's where
up.
they are. And then about 8 a.m., General John Reynolds wants to get General Wadsworth's division on the march to Gettysburg. Now, initially, the Iron Brigade was to have led the march north. You know how they rotate brigades, so one brigade's not always eating the dust of the other brigades. One day in front, one day to the rear. Well, the Iron Brigade was originally supposed to lead the division march north, but General Meredith was late in getting his men ready.
Right.
And General Lysander Cutler was always on time, always had his men to move. And Reynolds, sensing the need to get his men on the march, that's when Cutler's brigade will take the lead, and they'll lead the brigade to Gettysburg with the Iron Brigade trailing behind.
Yeah, wasn't Wadsworth waiting for the Iron Brigade to get ready?
Oh, absolutely.
And Reynolds came
And
along
yeah.
and said, "No time for that.
No time for that.
Get moving."
Yeah,
Yeah.
Got to in the haste. They got to get going.
So that is why then the brigades came on the field in the order they did.
Yeah,
And so it was supposed to be probably that Meredith would have been north and just slightly
Just
south
think
of the
about
railroad cut.
if they had gone to Gettysburg as originally planned.
Yeah.
The Iron Brigade might very possibly have fought on the north side of the Chambersburg Pike against General Joe Davis's
Right.
large, very
Yeah.
large Confederate brigade, whereas Cutler's brigade, much smaller than the Iron Brigade, would have been fighting on the south side. Might have been a very different turn of events.
Right. It could have been totally different
Yeah,
there. It's almost
yeah.
like the Iron Brigade was meant to be in those
It
woods.
might be.
Yeah.
Just might
well,
be.
well, we're giving it away too soon.
Yeah.
So, okay. So go ahead. So
So they're marching up the Emmitsburg Road, and initially these men, it was a leisurely march. They didn't think there was any battle looming. But as they got closer and closer, what did they begin to hear? They begin to hear the
Artillery.
rattle of musketry, the
muskets,
deep boom of artillery, and they know that General John Buford's men are engaged in battle.
Yeah.
So it probably just hastened their step a little bit. And I've got one account here. As they approach Gettysburg, Lieutenant Colonel Rufus Dawes of the 6th Wisconsin, he would have the band play "The Campbells Are Coming." Okay, very famous song of the Klan. Okay.
the Campbell clan.
Campbells are coming, the Campbell clan.
Not the
yeah.
Ku Klux
No,
Klan.
not the Ku Klux Klan. The
get
fierce
that straight.
rattling song of the clans, not the KKK.
The clans, okay. What does
Lieutenant
it say?
Colonel Rufus Dawes of the 6th Wisconsin, he selected the song, he said, quote, "through a fancy that the people would infer that the rebels are running or would very soon be running after so fine a body of soldiers of the 6th Wisconsin was to confront them." So they're marching to the field of battle, okay? But what's interesting is 6th Wisconsin is the last in the brigade line, last regiment in the brigade line. So
Okay.
as they're marching north, we got the 2nd Wisconsin first, then the 7th, then you've got the 19th Indiana, 24th Michigan, and last the 6th Wisconsin, along with what's called the Brigade Guard.
Right.
The Brigade Guard.
Now explain the Brigade
The
Guard.
Brigade Guard is where you take 20 men from each regiment to form what's called the Brigade Guard. Oftentimes, they would act as a provost marshal. Sometimes, as the brigade moved into battle, they would be left behind to guard the knapsacks that the men dropped off so that
Okay.
they could retrieve them after a battle. But the Brigade Guard is eventually attached to the 6th Wisconsin. Yeah.
So the 6th Wisconsin then gets an extra 100 men
Right.
in their ranks
Right.
when they go into battle.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So all right. So they come up online and wherever. Go ahead.
So what they're going to do, they're going to reach the Godory Farm on the Emmitsburg Road. And who's there waiting for them? General John Reynolds.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he wants to get the Iron Brigade to go cross-country to the field of battle. He doesn't want he doesn't want to have them march through town. It'll take too much time. So he's going to have the fences take down along the Emmitsburg Road so they can head to the northwest, crossing towards the McMillan Farm and eventually reaching the Lutheran Theological Seminary. Once they reach the seminary, they'll proceed north along Seminary Ridge, and from there, they're going to move into battle.
Real quick here, JD wants to know, can you speak to any key leadership decisions that were made by King, Gibbon, and Meredith that contributed to the esprit de corps of the Iron Brigade?
Well, I think if you talk about the esprit de corps, about the discipline of the Iron Brigade, you have to refer to John Gibbon. I mean, he's the officer that would instill that pride within the brigade. He's the officer that would insist that they wear those uniforms of the U.S. regulars to help instill that pride and discipline within the brigade. He made the Iron Brigade what they are,
Okay.
without a doubt.
All right.
One of the funniest stories I can recall is the men of the Iron Brigade hated the white leggings. They were a real pain to put on.
Yeah, they look
They're
uncomfortable.
They are. I mean, I can imagine when the reveille, is sounded first thing in the morning. You got to take time to put those leggings on. Oh my God! I mean, I have those things.
Yeah,
I
is
hate
it like
putting them
one
on.
buckle at a time?
It's not buckles.
There
It's
were
strings.
laces,
Oh,
They're
yeah.
strings.
Laces.
Yeah, that you lace through holes. Yeah,
Oh,
they're
what
laces.
a pain in the ass.
Pretty much
So,
rawhide.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a rawhide. So apparently one morning, General John Gibbon awoke, and one of his favorite practices was always to go to see his horse. Well, as he visited his horse, he would look down and see the horse had 2 pairs of leggings on each hoof. Yeah. So the men of the Iron Brigade overnight had dressed his horse in leggings.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and I think the old West Point graduate and veteran of the Army of the Potomac got quite a glass at that, to say the least.
How about Peter Zach would like to know, can you tell what rifles were issued to the regiments of the Iron Brigade, any variation that influenced their placement? That's a good question. I was going to get to that later.
There's an excellent book called Small Arms at Gettysburg, and it's written by Joe Bilby. And he gives an account of every single regiment and what arms they carried into battle at the Battle at Gettysburg. As with most of the brigades, they had mixed rifled muskets, okay? But a lot of them were the Austrian Lorenz that they carried into battle.
I was at, not last November, but the one before, Hessler and Eric Lindblad,
Right.
their podcast, they did a shoot down at the North-South Skirmish Association. And so I went, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I could not miss when I was shooting the Lorenz. Everything else I was missing.
Really?
Well, not everything.
Okay.
But I mean, if I did 5 shots out of any other gun,
Yeah.
I'd miss 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
But with the Lorenz, I hit everything. I loved it.
I mean, there are actually mixed reviews on the Lorenz.
yeah.
Some soldiers hated them. Some soldiers loved them.
I thought it was lovely.
No different than any of the rifled muskets they carry.
You know, that's the thing. I was looking because we're doing a show with Phil Spaulding about the musket soon.
Right.
And so I've been kind of looking into it in the books that I have. And I look at them and I go, what the hell's the difference? They all look the same, right? And they all
58.
basically do the same thing.
I mean, the British Enfield 5.77 caliber. It's basically the
caliber's
same as the
different.
58 caliber.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can almost use that ammunition interchangeably.
right.
But Yeah, there's not much of a major difference. I mean, at all times, regiments were issued malfunctioning weapons, whether they were Springfields or Enfields
Right.
or Lorenz.
Just for the fun of it.
Yeah, just for that.
And the Lorenz was technically it was intended to be or experimented on to be the first smokeless rifle.
Oh, right,
Smokeless
right.
powder rifle.
Yeah. There was wasn't there like an experimental like air gun back then?
Yes, in fact, there are some accounts that an air gun was used on Culp's Hill.
That's where I heard it.
Yeah. By I believe by Union troops.
Just one?
I don't
was
know
used?
how many.
Oh.
I don't know if a company
it
was armed with them or.
I think it was a company of the 5th Ohio.
Yeah, 5th Ohio. Definitely wasn't the full regiment, but it was
Yeah.
probably a company. Yeah.
I wonder how that did.
I don't know. Well, I don't think they were too popular because it wasn't widespread
It didn't
throughout the
catch
army
on.
afterwards.
Yeah,
that I'm
yeah.
aware of. Yeah,
No, I hear you. Yeah, you're right.
And then, of course, you had some of the brigades armed with the buck and ball. You know,
Yeah.
the smoothbore.
Sure.
I mean, the Irish Brigade,
Yep.
buck and ball.
Was
The
it 12th New Jersey?
12th New Jersey, buck and ball, and they loved the weapon.
It was the one by the was it 93rd? No, not 93rd PA. Down by the Pennsylvania Memorial. They have it on their monument.
Oh, that's the is that? Yeah.
Six
Is,
questions.
is that the 88th? No. 90th.
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 I think there's a 9 in there
90th,
somewhere.
because they got the buck and ball on the side.
On the
of
side.
monument.
Yeah.
Yeah, the buck and ball on the
Yeah.
side. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get back to the Gettysburg story here.
So what's going to happen is the Iron Brigade reaches Seminary Ridge. Immediately, they're going to deploy for battle. And they're going to move forward from the ridge. They're initially moving down Seminary Ridge in column, but then they're going to turn left to the west. And then once they turn left, they're going to go from column into line of battle. 2nd Wisconsin first. And they're going to move forward in what we would call an echelon approach, where the 1st Regiment, the 2nd Wisconsin, is out front, and to the left rear of the 2nd is the 7th Wisconsin. To the left rear of the 7th Wisconsin, we've got the 19th Indiana. And then to the left rear of the 19th Indiana is the 24th Michigan. So that's how they're coming forward in that staggered approach
Okay.
to Herbst Woods. And those Alabamans and Tennesseans are eventually making their way through Herbst Woods.
So give me it again. 2nd, 7th, 24th. Oh,
No,
19th, 24th.
And then the 24th is on the far left of the brigade.
And
So
the
that's
6th is
6th Wisconsin
sent over-
is going to be sent over to the seminary in reserve,
okay.
along with the brigade guard.
So the 6th Wisconsin is the entire reserve for Wadsworth's division.
Right.
Yeah. For Wadsworth.
He's going to be in reserve for Wadsworth. Whenever a division went into battle, generally would take at least one regiment and hold them in reserve. Should that an emergency arise, they could be plugged into a gap to fill an emergency situation, or if an opportunity arose, they could be used to exploit an opportunity.
You know, one of the things about the first day that's very glaring to me is that it really shows the difference between any Union unit versus its Confederate counterpart. Regiment, brigade, division, corps. The Confederates always outnumber them.
Right.
Right.
Generally they do.
Yeah.
And that's because of the policy of Abraham Lincoln.
Which is what?
Well, as the war progressed, the Union, along with Abraham Lincoln, rather than re-recruiting regiments to close to their original strength, or at least recruit them to a respectable strength, what they elected to do instead was just raise entire new regiments. Why? Well, who appointed the field grade officers for these new regiments? The governors of the respective states. So this is patronage. This is political patronage, where the governor can appoint those
it
field
would
grade
behoove
officers.
him to make a new regiment.
Right. So in other words, a lot of these veteran regiments just continue to dwindle down. Yeah, there is some recruitment for them, but for the better part, brand new regiments are raised rather than raising the strength of some of the veteran regiments. Yeah.
It's interesting too because by the end of this battle, and I'm sure this happened in other battles, but some regiments are commanded by captains.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, because everybody's just
even on the Confederate side at times. Yeah, absolutely.
Crazy. So that's the thing about the first day to me is that you really get to see that corps to corps.
Yeah.
The Union is they're not going to have as many men.
Well, it all depends how that commanding general wants to slice up the pie in order to maintain command and control. The Union has 7 corps of infantry. Confederates just 3 corps.
Right, but they're big.
Union corps are between 10 and 12,000, 13,000, whereas the Confederate corps are over 20,000 each.
So do you think, though, that the Union way of organization made it more fleet of foot?
I think both Army commanders are going to search for that right combination.
Yeah.
Remember, shortly after, in 64, when we move into 1864, what does General Meade do? He reorganizes the Army of Potomac. Okay, he's already lost the 12th and 11th Corps sent south, and he decides to disband the 1st Corps and the 3rd Corps, who had taken very heavy losses at Gettysburg, and those men are absorbed into other corps. So he goes to a 3-corps structure from a 7-corps structure. Whereas Lee does the opposite. Remember, he had 2 corps.
Right.
And he felt they had 2 corps and close to 30,000 men apiece were too much for one corps commander. He goes from 2 corps to 3 corps. So it's that commanding general searching for that right combination to maintain command and control.
And does he add one later?
Who's that?
Lee. Isn't there a 4th corps later, or am I confusing that with something else?
I'm not sure of. I'm not aware of a 4th corps.
It's not important because we're talking about Gettysburg.
Of course, later in the war, you've got so many changes within the Army of Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
As the Confederate Army begins to dwindle away and being bled to death by the Union forces.
Right.
So,
I was reading last night in Battles and Leaders, and I was reading Hunt's account.
Funny,
I
had someone on the battlefield today talking about Henry.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, and he was saying that it seemed to me that from what he was saying there is that he thought that the Army should have been 4 corps. He didn't think the 7 corps thing was smart, and he said it was kind of.
The problem is you got 7 different corps commanders reporting to the commanding general. It's too much.
It's too much.
It's too much. That's why Meade consolidates it to eventually 3 corps: the 2nd, the 5th, and the 6th.
I could see advantages to both.
Yeah.
The Confederate and the Union ways of doing it. But whatever. Okay, so back to Gettysburg.
Yeah.
So the fighting goes. So the Iron Brigade comes in. They're on the field.
They're approaching Herbst Woods in that an echelon approach. Okay, and as they begin to move into the woodlot, they're going to battle that brigade of Tennesseans and Alabamans under the command of General James Archer.
Now, Archer is focusing on Gamble's men, right? He's not even. They're not even aware that the Iron Brigade. They're kind of flanking. Go ahead.
Well, one of the reasons why the Iron Brigade is sent into the Herbst Woods is to cover the left flank of Cutler's Brigade. 2 regiments of which are deployed in and around the McPherson Varn buildings. That's the 84th
they had gone to relieve
and the
Gamble.
95th New York. So Reynolds is wanting to get them into the woods in order to protect the left flank of Cutler's Brigade. Okay, so they're entering the woodlot. The Tennesseans and Alabamans are chasing back those troopers from John Buford's division. Okay, Gamble's boys. Okay, and of course, as the Tennesseans and Alabamans come through the woodlot, and they eventually do encounter the 2nd Wisconsin and the 7th Wisconsin, they're going to very quickly realize those are not militia. In fact, at one point, a Tennessean would shout, "Boys, tain't militia. That's those black hat devils. That's the Army of the Potomac."
Yeah.
They fought against the Iron Brigade in the past. Remember, Second Bull Run, Antietam, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville. So they know now they're up against the Army of the Potomac. So it's the 2nd Wisconsin that enters the woodlot first.
So now, is it at this point where Reynolds gets schwacked?
Reynolds is directing the 2nd Wisconsin into the woodlot. He's right up front with the men.
Not supposed to be.
Well, as a commanding general, perhaps not. But General Reynolds was always up front with his men. He led from the front. Okay, so he's up front with the 2nd Wisconsin. Exactly how far behind him he is when the 2nd Wisconsin enters the woodlot is open for speculation. But as they enter the woodlot, he would shout, "Forward, men, forward. For God's sakes, forward. Drive those men from the woods." And then that's when the volley rings out. And, of course, what had Reynolds done, he turned in his saddle looking to the rear. He's looking for the 7th Wisconsin coming forward in that an echelon approach, and he struck in the back of the head, and he's dead before he hits the ground.
Would have been in the face if he didn't turn.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I guess he's lucky.
Yeah.
All right, so Reynolds is down.
Right.
Now, Doubleday is going to assume command.
Right.
But where's Doubleday at this point?
Well, he's on the field of battle.
Okay.
Because he had actually preceded his division to the field of battle and unfortunately didn't really have a lot of time to consult with Reynolds. Because Reynolds, with his death, he did not express what his commander's intent was. Just exactly what he was aiming to do on the morning of July 1st with the Iron Brigade and the Union Infantry.
Right.
So all Doubleday knows is that General Reynolds wanted the Iron Brigade to attack through this woodlot as a bastion against any future Confederate approaches. Yeah, drive those men from the woods.
And okay, so Doubleday comes on, but I guess until he is effectively in command, it's kind of Meredith and Cutler are kind of doing what they can, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
of course, the fight on the north side of the Chambersburg Pike is different, very different what takes place on the south side.
Yeah. So okay, let me see if I get this right. I picture an S. So the Cutler goes up, the Confederate Davis's brigade kind of pushes in his flank, bending it back, and then the line comes down, and Archer is going into the left of Cutler and what's left of Gamble.
He's on the right of Cutler. He's on the right.
Yeah. But it's Cutler's left, Archer, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So then the Iron Brigade comes in. And they push Archer back.
They push him back.
They flank him.
It's a tale of outflanking maneuvers.
Yes.
Because eventually, Cutler's brigade is completely outflanked on their right by the 55th North Carolina, which leads to the collapse of the brigade and being driven back towards the town of Gettysburg, whereas the Iron Brigade, they are going to completely outflank Archer's brigade on their right with the 24th Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then, well, then what happens? So they get in there, they start fighting.
Archer's brigade, what do you call it? I should say Cutler's brigade is going to be routed by General Joe Davis's brigade. That's the 55th North Carolina, the 2nd Mississippi, and the 42nd Mississippi. They're driving Cutler back, okay? In the meantime, the Iron Brigade has reached the Herbst Woods, and they begin driving the Alabama and Tennessee boys back of Archer's brigade. In fact, when the 2nd Wisconsin makes that initial entry into the woodlot, they're going to sustain a volley from 2 Tennessee regiments, the 7th and 14th. It was said with that single volley alone, 30% of all the casualties that the 2nd Wisconsin suffered on the day were a result of that first single volley.
Wow.
And eventually, the 2nd Wisconsin suffers 77% casualties.
So how many? Let's talk numbers here. How many men does the 2nd Wisconsin have?
302.
And how many men do the 7th and 14th Tennessee have?
Oh, it's a small brigade, probably in the mid 200s.
Each?
Each, yeah.
Okay. So
overall, Archer only has
1,200?
Probably not even that.
Okay.
Maybe 1,000 men as he's going through the woodlot. Yeah, because he's been battling those troopers, those Union troopers. So he's lost some men. So
by this point,
he's got probably a little over 1,000 at most.
Gotcha.
Yeah, a little over 1,000 at most. Whereas the Iron Brigade, they've got 1,829 men, but of course the 6th Wisconsin, which has about 444 men with the brigade guard. You got to minus that. So we've got about 1,400 men plus going into the Herbst Woods.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so at this point, the fighting in the woods, it's not really a, just stand and keep shooting at each other type of fight.
Very quickly, Archer's brigade is going to be routed. Because what happens as the 2nd Wisconsin recovers from that initial staggering volley, they continue forward into the wood line. And at that point, who begins to catch up to them about, maybe parallel? They could probably see the McPherson barn and house on their right. Once they entered that deep into the wood line, that's when the 7th Wisconsin catches up to them. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's when they have one continuous line, 2nd and 7th. But with that, now the 7th Wisconsin has their left flank temporarily exposed because the 19th Indiana and the 24th Michigan are still coming forward to their left rear. So at this point, the 1st Tennessee, along with the 13th Alabama, they think they have an opportunity whereby if they could change front and face that vulnerable left flank, they could strike the Iron Brigade on their left, those 2 Wisconsin regiments. And they do just that. They change front, facing to the north to strike that flank, deliver a crushing volley on the left flank of the 7th Indiana. But just as they completed their movement, who comes crashing down through the wheat upon those 2 regiments that had changed front? The 19th Indiana.
Right.
So the tables
So
are
they get
immediate.
fl-
So
so
now a turning movement
Yeah.
to make a flank attack is going to happen to those 2 regiments.
It's a story of flanking the
Flank
flankers.
maneuvers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, you got the 24th Michigan eventually reaches to the left of the 19th
Yeah. So
Indiana.
at some point, the 19th and 24th switch positions in line.
That's for the afternoon
Oh, okay.
contest.
Okay.
That
So
is
we
for the
haven't gotten there
afternoon
yet.
contest.
So
yeah.
the Iron Brigade kind of pursues Archer's Brigade across Willoughby's Run.
Right.
And
They're driving through the Herbst Woods. They eventually drive them all the way across Willoughby's Run. Okay. Some of the men in the Iron Brigade are crossing the Willoughby's Run. They continue to chase the Tennesseans and Alabamans all the way back to Hers Ridge.
yeah, trying to play some golf.
Right. Yeah, maybe a round of golf with Eisenhower. But at that point, that's where at one point General Archer is trying to reform some of his men on the other side, the west side of Willoughby's Run. He's with the color bearer of the 13th Alabama. Well, he's trying to reform in a little bit of patch of woods just to the west side of Willoughby's Run when all of a sudden a big Irishman by the name of Private Patrick Maloney grabs him from the collar and literally begins dragging him to the rear into captivity.
Huh. Is that
And almost immediately, Archer wants to get to the rear into captivity. He's afraid this Irishman's going to kill him. He really is. He's afraid he's going to kill him.
Yeah.
And then as he's being dragged to the rear, who does Archer come upon? His old pre-war buddy in the Army. That's General Abner Doubleday. And Doubleday says, "How are you, Archie? I'm glad to see you." And Archie would say, "Well, I'm not glad to see you by a damn sight." And I'm sure it was a little more colorful language, too, mixed in there.
How do you think, do you think that was said with animosity, or do you think that was kind of like self-deprecating humor type of thing? I mean, I'm thinking if I bump into an old friend in that circumstance,
Yeah.
right?
I think,
it would be kind of
the
like,
type of person Doubleday was, I think he was probably glad to see Archer.
No, I'm talking about Archer's comment.
Oh, Archer's comment.
Yeah.
Oh, he's humiliated at this point.
So you think
Keep in mind, he
means
is
it.
the first general officer captured under Lee's command.
Oh, right.
Since Lee took command, he's the first general officer
So
captured
he's
under
got
Lee.
that distinction.
Not a notoriety that he perhaps wants. Yeah.
No,
So
yeah.
he's humiliated at this point. He's being led to the rear by this Irishman. And eventually, of course, he's going to be stripped of his sword. There were some accounts that he had taken his sword, thrust it in the ground, and broke it off at the hilt. But Lieutenant Harris, part of Solomon Meredith's staff, would dispute that. He was saying that he was relieved of his sword at one point.
And he didn't want to surrender to lower rank.
That's
right.
right.
So
He wants to surrender to an officer of at least equal or higher rank.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And is that what is that like protocol?
Yeah, that's more or less protocol. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then so that takes kind of that kind of brings an end to the morning's fighting for the Iron Brigade, or what
there's
happens?
another action that takes place.
Well, first of all, wait.
Yeah.
So they're going chasing him over Willoughby's Run up the field. They're going.
Finally they're being called back.
Yeah, who's calling him back?
Some of the boys are yelling on to Richmond. No, that's enough for one morning.
Right.
They're being called back to their officers, okay, because by crossing Willoughby's Run and chasing him west to Hers Ridge, they're overextending themselves. So they're going to be called back. They're going to be called back eventually and reform on West McPherson's Ridge.
West McPherson's
Okay, there's
Ridge.
two McPherson's Ridge, east and then west. So they're going to reform on West McPherson's Ridge.
So east would be where the road is.
Right.
And west would
in
be...
front of Reynolds Death Site Memorial today.
Yeah.
Right.
And then west would be where the
their
road goes
monuments,
through the
right, where their
woods.
monuments rest today.
Okay.
Yeah, that's roughly West McPherson's Ridge.
And if you go there, it's a pretty decent hill.
It's a good sized slope coming up from Willoughby's Run.
I
Without
wouldn't
a
mind
doubt.
trying to hold that hill.
No, it's
Have a good advantage there.
Yeah. The only problem is the Iron Brigade is forward, and as the 3rd Division of the 1st Corps arrives, okay, Colonel Roy Stone and his 3 Bucktail regiments are deployed where? In and around the McPherson Farm buildings. But then the last brigade to arrive on the field of battle of the 3rd Division is going to be Colonel Chapman Biddle. Where does he eventually form his brigade?
To the left.
Back on East McPherson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not in support of the left flank of the Iron Brigade.
Right. So
Yeah.
they're on either side of the
Yeah.
Iron Brigade,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
must make command very fun.
Many of the officers of the Iron Brigade, the commanding officers, Colonel Henry Moreau, had requested from General Solomon Meredith and then through Doubleday to pull the Iron Brigade back to East McPherson's Ridge. But Doubleday would say no. As far as he knows, that General Reynolds wanted the Iron Brigade to secure the position in the woodlot as a bastion against any further Confederate incursions from the west.
Sounds smart.
Yeah.
You don't want to give. You don't want to give them
You don't want
that
to give
height.
up. You don't want to give up ground that you've earned in blood.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
So,
But
before,
that doesn't finish the action, of course, on the morning, because what do we have with the 6th Wisconsin? 6th Wisconsin can make that charge upon the railroad.
So,
track.
okay, but before we get there, so I just want to make sure that I'm getting this right in my head of the timeline. Stone and Biddle arrive in the morning.
Late morning.
Right. While things are still happening.
Pretty much after Archer's brigade has been routed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're just filing in and
They're filing in and taking positions to the right and left of the Iron Brigade.
okay.
Yeah.
Now, 6th Wisconsin.
6th Wisconsin.
So let's go back. They're left at the seminary.
Right.
And they're the division's reserve.
Right.
I just think that's so paltry for a division to have one regiment. What if you need 2?
344 men plus 100 men from the brigade guard don't form much of a reserve, but nonetheless, that was standard practice.
Okay.
Keep in mind, later on, after the 6th Wisconsin makes their attack upon the railroad cut, and when Colonel Chapman Biddle arrives, what does he do? He places the 151st in reserve.
Yeah.
At the seminary.
So was it Doubleday that put them in reserve, or was it Meredith?
It's going to be Doubleday.
It's Doubleday. Okay.
Yeah, Doubleday.
All right. So now they're in reserve at the seminary.
In his area, the seminary building, right?
And what happens that pulls them out of reserve?
Well, what happens is the rout of Cutler's brigade on the north side of the Chambersburg Pike. Okay, they're being driven back. First is going to be the 76th New York, completely outflanked on the right by the 55th North Carolina. They're going to give away first. Then it's going to be the 56th Pennsylvania. They're going to have to give way to the left of the 76th New York. And last is going to be the 147th New York. Now, the 147th is in a very awkward position. They're forward of their 2 sister regiments. They're about 100 yards or more forward. They're towards West McPherson's Ridge, where the other 2 regiments are essentially on East McPherson's Ridge.
Okay.
So they're out there by themselves, and they're going to be last to be given the order to pull back. Unfortunately, the staff officer, after having delivered the order, Colonel Hoffman of the 147th will go to deliver the order, takes a round through the throat, and his horse bolts to the rear. So he's never able to deliver the order. So Major Harney takes command of the regiment, and the soldiers within the ranks are pleading, "We must retreat. We're being surrounded." And he would say, "I have no orders to do so. No orders." So they're just going to stay out there singly and alone. And eventually, the 42nd will strike them on their front. The 2nd was Mississippi and the 55th will make around their right flank. In fact, at one point, the 147th refuses their right flank facing north to counter that flanking maneuver, but they're being virtually surrounded.
And they're so small compared to any one of these other regiments.
Yeah.
And you got 3 of them bearing down on you.
And then eventually, what happens is Major Harney sees Hall's battery, the main battery, pulling out. And he says, well, now is the time to get out. He was there to cover the right flank of Hall's battery.
Right.
Once they're giving way and they're pulling back towards town, he's done his job. So he gives a very unique order. The order was about face, run. That was the order. One of the more unique orders I've ever heard given on the field of battle.
About face, get the hell out of
face
here.
and young. So now the 147th is pulling back. They take terrible losses with that short stand by themselves. But now Cutler's brigade is being entirely driven off the field of battle, back towards Sheeds Woods. Well, guess what's arisen? The emergency.
Yes.
And that's where General Doubleday will order the 6th Wisconsin to move to the north towards that railroad cut
So now,
to retrieve the fortunes of the day. Yeah.
okay, by the time he sends them over there,
Yeah.
are the Confederates in the cut yet?
No.
Uh-huh.
No. They're not in the cut. In fact, as they're driving Cutler's men, as they would say, back towards town,
Right.
okay, they're heading directly east.
Okay.
But then all of a sudden, they look to the south. And what do they see? They see a blue wave coming towards them. That's the men of the 6th Wisconsin. So what they do is they change front. Now they're going to direct the brigade facing directly south. So you'll have the 55th North Carolina furthest towards the east, the 2nd Mississippi in the center, and the 42nd Mississippi furthest to the west. That's the new brigade line as they've changed front facing south.
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
By the way, folks at home, if you have the Lano map book, it's helpful to look
absolutely.
at that while you're going. That's what I'm doing.
I'm always a little intimidated when I take a guest on the field and he breaks out Lano. I said, I better be on my game.
Right.
Yeah.
Another good one is Brad Gottfried's book, Maps of Gettysburg.
Excellent.
Okay, so continue.
So here you got the 3 regiments of Joe Davis's brigade have changed front facing the south with the approach of the 6th Wisconsin. And as the 6th Wisconsin nears the southern fence line along the Chambersburg Pike, that's when the Mississippians and North Carolinians are going to deliver a volley. Okay? And that's when, as the 6th Wisconsin that had gone from column to line of battle, that's when they finally reach the fence line, the south side of the Chambersburg Pike. Okay. And just beforehand, Lieutenant Colonel Dawes, commander of the 6th Wisconsin, his horse had been struck, and he went down heavily in a pile. And as his men are going past him, he goes, "Go on, boys, go on." So they reach the fence line. And that's where Lieutenant Colonel Dawes, perhaps even still under the horse, shouts to his men, "Fire, fire by file from the right." And that's where the 6th Wisconsin will fire their very first staggered yet effective volley upon those Mississippians and North Carolinians. Okay? When you fire by file from the right, you've got a regiment in line of battle, 2 ranks, front and rear rank. So the soldier in front with the soldier to his rear is considered one file.
Yeah.
So if you're firing by file from the right, the first file is first, and then after they file, it goes all the way down, one after the other, after the other, the other. The reason for that, when the last file fires all the way down on the left, now the men have gone to independent fire and have reloaded. So you've got a constant fire going downfield against the enemy.
Okay. Now, would that have been executed? You know, when you go and see like out in the park here, and they have reenactors demonstrating, and they'll do that.
Yeah.
It's very, bloop, bloop, bloop. But in reality, would it just be more like
Very quickly.
Yeah. Just
I mean,
like
these
a
men are
rip down the
trained.
line.
Yeah, it's like a machine gun fire.
Yeah.
Very quick down the line.
Yeah.
Of course, when you go to a lot of these great reenactments, what do the regiments do? They all get in one long line and they fire all at the same time.
Right. Right.
Well, what's the problem with that?
Then
They're all unloaded at the same time. Yeah, no. By doing it fire by fire from the right, you maintain that constant fire.
So would that have been more the more common order given?
Yes,
It would.
Because once you fired your initial volley, it's going to be a fire by fire from the right. And then you go to independent fire.
Fire at will.
Each soldier loading and discharging his weapon as best as he can to get led downfield.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so they fired that first volley on the on the other side of the fence line, which is the southern boundary of the Chambersburg Pike, and then they're going to be ordered across. They're going to be ordered across, and they're going to end up climbing the northern fence line, and now they're standing in the open field no more than, 150 yards from the railroad cut. But after the Confederates had sustained that first volley by the 6th Wisconsin, that's when they're going to decide to go down in the cut.
They just disappear.
Yeah, that's when they're going to decide.
Ground swallows
I got a
them up.
great, let me see if I can quickly find that great quote by Lieutenant Harris. He talks about it. Where did these men from Mississippi and North Carolina go at a given point? Yeah, he would write, he said, "For once we will have a stand-up fight. No trees to hide behind. When all of a sudden, presto, they disappeared." Where did they go? They went down in a car.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not Lieutenant Colonel Rufus Dawes or the men of 6th Wisconsin even recognized there was a railroad cut to their front, perhaps not.
Probably not.
Because there was a tall field of grass, about probably 4 feet in height.
And they hadn't built the bridge over it
They
yet.
hadn't built the bridge. Well,
So
absolutely. We
there's
didn't
nothing to
know until they
indicate,
built
yeah.
the bridge. So they may not very well have known there was a cut there. And then all of a sudden, like Lieutenant Harris says, they disappeared.
Yeah.
They went down in the cut.
And so as Dawes's men are going across that field, they're taking what, leg wounds, right?
That's when they're suffering the heaviest casualties.
Yeah.
Yeah, because initially they're standing out in the open after they crossed the second defense line.
Yeah.
And they're getting cut to pieces. They're standing out in the open.
Yeah.
So that's when Lieutenant Colonel Dawes, he's going to seek out the commanding officer of the 95th New York.
And they're to their west.
They're to their immediate left or to the west.
They're okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so they're like right there with them.
They're aligned alongside them.
Okay.
Because what happened, the 84th in New York and the 95th New York, what they did, they pulled back about 100 yards, changed front facing north, and they're going to move across the cut to align themselves alongside the 6th Wisconsin.
Okay.
So we've got the 6th Wisconsin, 95th New York, and the 84th New York, the 14th Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And they're extending beyond, the 84th is beyond today's railroad bridge. Okay, that's how west they're extending. Beyond today's railroad bridge.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's where their monument is.
That's where their monument is, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the road wasn't there.
Obviously not, no.
Reynolds Ave.
Or the bridge.
Is it
yeah.
Reynolds or Buford at that point? It's
About
where the bridge is.
That's Buford.
That's
I
Buford.
believe that's Buford.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Buford Avenue wasn't there.
No.
No bridge was there.
No.
The mound that the bridge is on was built up for the
Wow,
bridge.
yeah, exactly.
That wasn't.
that
that's
was-
not the original.
That was flat ground
Yeah.
extending all the way to the west.
So it's hard to picture today unless you can remove the bridge. I'm sorry, and the
embankment,
road
and the
Yeah.
large embankment.
And you can
yeah.
kind of see it when you when you go there. You can just tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So go ahead. Tell us.
So
tell
we've
us about
got the 3 regiments in line.
Yeah.
And Rufus Dawes seeks out the commanding officer of the 95th New York. Now, Colonel Stone, the commanding officer, was wounded early on. So who's in command now? Major Pye. And he tells Major Pye, we must charge. We must charge. We cannot stand here out in the open. We're getting cut to pieces. And that's when Lieutenant Colonel Rufus Dawes will give the order to charge. Unfortunately, most of the men within the ranks did not hear the order.
Oh,
But who did hear the order?
the flag.
The colors.
Yeah.
And colors are always planted in the center. There's a center company of the regiment. So they charge first. And once they started moving forward, that's when the left wing and the right wing will charge trailing behind.
So they're kind of like forming a V.
So they're forming pretty much an inverted V as they're making their way towards the cut with the colors at the point.
Okay.
But also they're initially charging singling alone because the 95th New York never heard the order to charge. Okay? And at one point, that same Lieutenant Harris would approach the men of the 94th New York and say, why will you not charge alongside of us? So they're charging singly and alone at one point.
So so it's 3 regiments that are going towards the cut. It's not just the 6th, but we only think of the 6th for some reason.
Yeah.
Is it because Dawes left a better account?
Well, actually, some of the initial accounts are going to be left by the commander of the 84th New York, and that's Colonel Fowler.
Did he write a book?
And in his report, he would say that he was the one who ordered the charge.
Oh, yeah.
And that he had sent a staff officer to Lieutenant Colonel Dawes informing him that he's going to order a charge. So there's going to be a little bit of a war of words after the war as to who takes the honor for ordering the charge.
So then why are we certain that the 6th went first?
All accounts seem to indicate that.
Okay.
Yeah, all accounts indicate.
No,
and it's also the 6th Wisconsin, and what do you call it? Corporal Francis Waller that eventually captures the battle flag of the 2nd Wisconsin.
Of the 2nd Mississippi.
Second Mississippi.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 2nd Mississippi. I'm getting my brigades mixed up.
So okay, it's not necessarily that Fowler was trying to take credit for something he didn't do. It just could be the confusion of battle.
He may have very well ordered a charge too.
Right.
Okay, I think both officers were probably thinking along the same lines.
What else are you going to do?
But they're several hundred yards to the west. Dawes can't hear them.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And he said, I never received a staff officer from Colonel Fowler telling me he's going to order a charge.
Yeah.
Okay. But
I every time I hear or read, but especially when I hear guides telling these anecdotes about the battles and stuff like that, I try to really picture it, like try to put myself there.
yeah.
And what aggravates me is that we have very few Civil War movies that are of Private Ryan status, right? I can imagine World War II because they do World War II really well in movies, right?
Yeah. All we need we need Steven Spielberg to direct a Civil War movie.
We do. Or you can donate to dhpioneers.com,
There you go.
and eventually, if we get $100 million, I'll make it. But anyway, so the movies, we don't really have good. Glory's the best, right? But it's,
in my opinion,
it's still not
Yeah.
Private Ryan level.
No.
Now, so what else do we have? We have reenactments, and they're too neat.
Yeah.
They're too by the book. They're too perfect. There's no chaos.
Yeah.
There's,
Yeah.
it's very well
Well, if
organized.
you've ever fought in the ranks, which I have, it can get pretty crazy out there at times.
I'm sure
Let
it
me tell
can,
you,
but
it gets chaotic.
But from the stands,
But
it looks
yeah,
pretty
but-
neat,
yeah, it
right?
does.
And it's so I have to imagine a real battle is not as
Oh, absolutely not.
neat as
A barrel battle is absolute chaos
Yeah.
and horror and destruction and death. Absolutely. Absolutely.
it's got to be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay, so while they're charging though, I think I did read somewhere that they were suffering a lot of leg wounds.
That's where
which-
they're going to suffer the most wounds, moving across that field to get to the cut. And it's going to be lower body, probably.
Yeah, which has
most
got
likely.
to be like you're running as fast as you can, right? Breakneck speed. And then your legs are swept out from under you. So you think you've got a bullet wound in your leg. But if you just take a face plant, you might have a broken nose or, split
sure.
lip or something like that.
Anything
So you're not
else.
just hurting where the bullet's hitting.
Yeah,
You're
sure. And a
hurting
number
everywhere.
of other injuries could occur. Yeah.
Not fun.
Yeah.
Not fun. Not easy.
But that's where they're going to take the most casualties, crossing that field to get to the cut.
Now, they get to the cut.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, when they get to the cut, it was said it was a crash of bayonets and club muskets. It's going to be at times some heavy hand-to-hand combat between the two forces. Of course, who's on the southern side of the cut, out of the cut, on the southern edge of the cut? That's going to be Corporal Murphy, W.B. Murphy of the 2nd Mississippi, waving the battle flag of the 2nd Mississippi. So immediately he draws attention. We've got all these Wisconsin boys making their way for that flag. And Murphy would write afterwards, there were a dozen men shot down like sheep in the mad dash for my flag. But eventually, who grabs him and his staff and the flag, it's going to be Corporal Francis Waller of the 6th Wisconsin. Yeah.
Now, this is what I try to picture the fight in the railroad cut, because you go there today.
Yeah.
It's very high.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
It's very deep. Yeah.
Deep. That's really what I meant. It's deep. And I can understand, hey, this looks good. Let's get in here.
Yeah.
But then it must be very quickly that they realized, oh, shit.
Yeah, unless
Like,
you got a
if-
machine gun position on the southern ridge, on the southern edge of the cut, you're in a tough spot.
Yeah, yeah, right. If the tables turn here,
Yeah.
we're fish in a barrel, like,
Yeah.
and that's really so. That's kind of what it becomes, right?
Yeah.
There's one way out that's easy,
Yeah.
and that's sealed off, or no?
Well, what they do is those that can escape, and that's going to be mostly the 42nd Mississippi, they're going to make their way directly west.
Yeah.
That way's open.
That's smart and easy.
Now, what had happened at one point, part of the 6th Wisconsin, part of the Brigade Guard will move into the railroad cut on the eastern edge, and they're going to be firing down the railroad cut to the west, striking those North Carolinians and Mississippians in the cut. Now, the 55th North Carolina, when they retreat, they're going to go north. Initially, they're going to go north and then proceed west. But the soldiers that take the brunt of the capture and the death and wounds is going to be the 2nd Mississippi in the very center.
Okay.
They're trapped in the center.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And they're also at the lowest point of the railroad cut.
Yeah.
Okay, we've been there, you
Yes,
and I.
yes,
You know,
yes.
that one spot where the CXS sign rests today. Yeah, don't go in here.
Yeah.
That's roughly the area where Corporal Murphy will have the flag taken from him. Okay, right at that spot. Because Dawes talks about it. When I approached the soldiers within the cut, it was roughly 4 feet deep where I stood.
Okay.
So roughly in that area.
And that's an unfinished railroad cut.
Right. There's
So it might not
the bed had been laid.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, the bed was there, but the rails would not be laid until a couple decades after the Civil War, 1884.
Do we know, was the bed the same as it is today? Was it
Probably
higher or
not,
lower?
not probably quite as high. Not,
Okay, so it was a little
perhaps
lower.
not quite as
So
low.
it
a
would have
little
been
lower.
deeper then.
Might have been a little deeper.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, how in God's name the Confederate soldiers, particularly those men from the 42nd Mississippi, how did they fire upon?
They had to be standing on each other's shoulders and
Maybe.
handing rifles
Yeah,
up.
or doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's taller than a man.
Yeah.
And it's a
Yeah.
sheer drop.
It's a sheer cliff.
If
yeah.
you haven't been to the railroad cut, you need to go and see it. You can't go on the tracks. It's
No,
CXS
no,
property,
please don't.
CSX property, and there's signs.
Right.
It's not that people haven't, but
Yeah.
you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But you can go on the bridge. You can go to the rim of the cut and look down
whether
and
it's
see.
the north rim or the south rim, you're
Yeah.
able to get up and close to the railroad cut itself.
And you can see, and it's hard to imagine.
Yeah.
Like, it's just
Well, particularly the men of 42nd Mississippi, they're in the deepest part of the cut.
Yeah.
And how in God's name could fire upon the men of the 84th New York, I don't know.
they had to be standing on each other's
Yeah,
shoulders. They
yeah.
had to create like
Maybe
a
a little triangle, like a cheerleader pyramid or something.
right,
you know?
yeah, something.
Yeah, yeah.
So I remember this had to be 90s, late 90s.
96,
Okay, the body.
the bodies. Yeah.
Okay, was he a Confederate? What do we know about the
We
body?
don't know which side he belonged to. In all likelihood,
But we do know it was a
probably-
soldier and not a murder victim.
Right, he was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Civil War remains.
Okay.
Whether he was Confederate or Union, it's never been fully established.
No buttons remained with him.
Not
or-
that I'm aware of.
Okay.
What I will say, in all likelihood, it was a Confederate soldier.
Okay.
Probably more than one.
And where was he found?
He was found roughly in the area where the 6th Wisconsin charged upon.
But like in the wall? or-
In the embankment, apparently. Apparently, there had been some heavy rains, and part of the embankment had been washed down and revealed the remains of a soldier
Wow.
buried
Now-
probably in the embankment.
Now you said maybe or probably more than one.
Might have been more than one. They don't know exactly how many human remains. Whether they were able to gather up all the pieces, I don't know. If they had 2 skulls, obviously it was more than one.
Right, or 2 pelvises.
But all we know is that today, those remains of those soldiers found in the railroad cut lie in a Soldiers National Cemetery under a headstone that simply says "Unknown Civil War Remains." That's the best that we could give them.
Wow.
Yeah.
You think there are, this has nothing to do with the subject, but I might as well ask you, do you think there are still remains out
Oh,
there?
absolutely.
There have to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's believed as many as 500 human remains still lie in the ground.
Really? I'm surprised they're not turning up more often.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Of course, in the area of Devil's Den, the Union burial details don't have time to get all the dead into the ground. It was said that they were throwing the bodies down the crevices of the rocks in Devil's Den. So,
Good.
you know.
Well, I'm sure those would have turned up with all the kids running around. in
Yeah, sooner or later.
Right,
But
Mommy,
there's many
it's a
of them
femur.
that fall down in the crevices.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Seems like once a year we got to send the EMS team down there to dig some kid out.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So it was a helicopter or something going on. Jeffrey Pasnick, he sent in a super chat, and he said, at what point did the reputation of the Iron Brigade reach the CSA? Today we recognize the Black Hats as a fierce fighting force. Would the Confederates at Gettysburg have known about them? Well, we know that, right?
They knew
They
them more as the Black Hat Devils than the Iron Brigade.
Yeah.
But believe me, the Confederates were fully experienced, the men of the Iron Brigade, at the Battle of South Mountain, at the Battle of Antietam, and their reputation began to spread. Absolutely.
All right, so we've got the railroad cut covered. Now, let's get back to the Iron Brigade themselves,
Right.
the whole brigade. What happens when finish out the morning and then...
Yeah,
bring us-
what eventually happens, the action in the Herbst Wood is just about finished. The fighting at the railroad cut is just about done. The only remaining scene is as Lieutenant Colonel Rufus Dawes approaches the railroad cut himself. What does he do? He calls into the cut and says, "Who is in command here?" And who answers? Well, Major Blair of the 2nd Mississippi. The colonel of the 2nd Mississippi had been wounded. He is now in command. And he calls back to Lieutenant Colonel Rufus Dawes, "I am. Who are you?" So we've got these two officers exchanging pleasantries as the battle is raging in the railroad cut.
How's your day going?
Yeah, how's your... And then Dawes does the completely unexpected. He jumps into the railroad cut, and he's pushing armed Confederate soldiers out of his way as he makes a path to Major Blair. And upon reaching Major Blair, he would say, "Surrender or I will fire." And Major Blair immediately handed over his sword, along with other field-grade officers that handed over their sword. And eventually, 230 Mississippians, perhaps some North Carolinians, will surrender to the 6th Wisconsin and the New York regiments.
That Dawes has a pair.
But one of the funniest stories about the fight at the railroad cut is when Corporal Francis Waller captures the battle flag of the 2nd Mississippi. Initially, he's thinking of going to the rear with his trophy. But instead, he thinks better of it. He throws the flag on the ground. He's standing upon it, loading and discharging his weapon upon the Confederate troops in the cut. When all of a sudden, he feels a tug at his feet. He looks down. There's a soldier from the 14th Brooklyn trying to drag the flag out from under his feet. And eventually he has to threaten to shoot him to get him to stop. Why? Well, what better way to earn the Medal of Honor than capture an enemy battle flag?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But he will maintain possession of the flag.
That's pretty admirable of Dawes to be
Yeah.
able to just... I love that visual of him pushing
just
armed
push him-
Confederates out of the way.
Push him out of his way.
I mean, I would be afraid that the minute I speak up and say, "Who's in charge here?" I'd get met with a flurry of bullets.
Yeah,
Right?
A fusillade upon you, absolutely.
I guess they must have known, like,
Yeah.
they're just going to shoot us.
I
like,
guess the Confederates recognized the
They got us.
situation they were now
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
And after Waller captured the flag, he would write that we pretty well cleaned them out.
Yeah.
In other words, they were ready to surrender when Dawes approached to cut himself.
Yeah. Rich Snyder says, thanks to Matt and Court and Larry for doing this. You're very welcome, Rich. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Rich.
So that essentially ends the morning engagement.
Okay.
Okay, with the surrender of those Mississippians and North Carolinians in the cut.
I know they didn't keep records this way, but in your estimation, or maybe someone has, left a record of some, in their estimation, how many casualties have they taken so far?
The 6th Wisconsin?
No. The Iron Brigade.
Iron Brigade. Well, on the day, they're going to lose 1,153 men.
Out of
1,829.
That's ridiculous.
So that's a 63% casualty rate. How many on the morning phase? Not near as many than the afternoon phase.
Yeah.
The afternoon is going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah, well,
an absolute bloodbath.
Let's get to the afternoon.
Yeah.
All right, so tell us.
Well, after the morning engagement, and those men who are on to Richmond are going to be called back.
Yeah.
Okay, they're going to form a new line on West McPherson's Ridge. Okay, but they're going to change the alignment a little bit. What they're going to do, what Solomon Mercer is going to do, he's going to place the 7th Wisconsin on the right of the brigade line, and he's going to take the 2nd Wisconsin and put them a little bit to their left rear, perhaps in a somewhat a reserve, because they're the ones that took heavy casualties on the morning, very heavy casualties. So we've got the 7th Wisconsin, 2nd Wisconsin. Now what he does, he takes 24th Michigan, who had been on the far left, he places them in the center of the brigade line. And who's moved to the far left of the brigade? The 19th Indiana. So he's restructured his brigade line from the morning engagement. Why does he do this? Well, number one, the 2nd Wisconsin, as I said, had taken very heavy losses. So he's trying to anchor his right with a regiment that did not take near as many losses. Also, I think he moves the 24th Michigan to the center for 2 reasons. Number one, this is really their first serious combat.
Right.
Remember, they had been in reserve at Fredericksburg, hadn't seen much action at Chancellorsville. This is really their first major engagement and battle. They're still somewhat green troops. Although they have been accepted by the men of the Iron Brigade, they're still relatively green. So he's going to place them in the center, but what he's going to do, he's going to bookend them with 2 veteran regiments, the 2nd Wisconsin and the 19th Indiana.
Okay.
Hold them steady. Plus, he also takes the 24th Michigan, I think, because they're the largest regiment of the brigade.
So have them in the center.
Have them in the center.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going to be the alignment for the afternoon engagement.
What are they, like 500 something? Or just about
which
the 24th.
24th, 496.
496.
496.
That's
yeah.
which is big for a
19th
Union regiment.
Indiana, about 308. The 7th Wisconsin, I think they're about, I think they're about 350, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah,
So these are pretty decent sized
they're
regiments.
decent size.
Yeah.
They're decent size regiment. The average size of a regiment at the Battle of Gettysburg, 350 men.
Right.
That's the average size.
Right. So the 24th is big.
Yeah, because they're the newest.
Right.
They're the newest.
And they're going to be facing an even bigger Confederate regiment.
Yeah, they're going to face, first of all, they're going to face the largest brigade in General Robert E. Lee's army, and that's the brigade of General Pettigrew.
And it's
About 2,500 men strong.
Right. So the 26th North Carolina, which is in that brigade, is not. It's the largest regiment.
Largest regiment in Lee's army,
but it's not because that's what 800 men, 855,
right around 800. Eric believes it might even be more. Eric Lindblake, he thinks they may be as high as 900. Yeah.
Okay, well let's say 850 to 900.
Yeah.
I've heard 890.
Yeah,
more times than once. Or 888 or
some figures place them as high as almost 900. Yeah.
So let's say 850 to 900. Okay.
Okay.
So there's still 1,100 men to account for if that regiment's or if that brigade is about 2,000 men strong. Yeah. So those other regiments have to be pretty sizable.
Oh, they're
too,
all
right?
large. They're all very large regiments. Whether it's the 11th North Carolina, that'll be on the right of the 26th when they come forward. To their right, extending the line south towards the Fairfield Road, will be the 47th, then the 52nd. And their brigade line almost extends all the way to the Fairfield Road.
Really?
Which means they are going to completely outflank both the Iron Brigade on their left with the 19th Indiana, on their right with the 19th Indiana, on their left with the 19th Indiana, and then on the left of Colonel Chapman Biddle's brigade with the 121st Pennsylvania.
That's huge. That's a lot of ground to cover.
Absolutely. I mean, all you got to do is drive down Reynolds Avenue, and you can see the first monument you come upon is the 121st Pennsylvania.
Right.
But then, if you're looking east, look to the right, you can see the flank marker of the 121st. It doesn't come near to reaching the Fairfield Road.
No.
Whereas the 52nd is just short of the Fairfield Road. That's how far they extend. That's a big brigade, 2,500 men strong. Yeah.
It's hard to. I've seen 2,500 people in one place. I've seen 60,000 people in one place. At a stadium, we all have, right? But to see them in these formations is another story.
Absolutely.
To just imagine, how much ground do 2,500 men shoulder to shoulder cover?
Yeah, well, keep in mind, you got 2,500 men, but they're in 2 ranks. So cut that in half.
Okay.
But each soldier takes up about 2 to 2.5 feet in width. So if you've got 1,000 men in line, that's quite a regimental line or brigade line.
That's a lot of math.
Yeah, it's too much for math. That's,
You're
I said
asking
that
me to
earlier.
do-
That's why I'm an historian and not a math teacher. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so just so that we get things straight, now we're talking about the Iron Brigade today, but chronologically, does their fight against Pettigrew happen before Rhodes's division attacks in the north, or from the north?
Rhodes' division's going to attack first.
Okay.
Sometime about 2:30, whereas at one point, General Lee is going to allow General Heath to bring forward fresh reinforcements with Rhodes' division attacking to the north, and he will bring forward the North Carolinians of Pettigrew. Let's not forget the Virginians of Colonel John Brockenbrough and his 4 regiments. They're going to come forward. They'll be to the left of Pettigrew's brigade as they come forward. Okay.
Yeah. So we're not doing the whole first day here. So that stuff is going on. I just wanted to give you guys, whatever that word is that I can't think of right now.
Context.
Thank you, sir. Context.
Very
So,
good.
So now the Iron Brigade is sitting there. There's stuff going on to the north.
Yeah.
But they don't care. We don't care. Because now we're waiting for Pettigrew to come across. So tell us about this.
Well, incredibly, as the Iron Brigade is in position on West McPherson's Ridge, they can see clearly all the Confederate buildup on her ridge. And when the North Carolinians come forward, one soldier in the 19th Indiana would write, "Total annihilation stared us in the face." They can see this massive brigade coming forward, and they can fully see that they're going to be far outflanked on their left. Just the 2 regiments alone, the 26th and the 11th North Carolina, who will essentially strike the 24th Michigan and the 19th Indiana. They extend far beyond.
Well, just those 2 are over 1,000
Just those 2
men.
alone is, absolutely.
God. So, okay. So they see this coming, and, man, like that. Yeah, they had to be evacuating their bowels.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't care how iron you are.
Yeah.
You see that coming. And like the guy said, total annihilation.
Stood them in the face.
Know what that can do.
But they held their ground.
But they're aware, though, that Biddle is on their left and Stone is on their right.
Yeah, they're aware they're on their left rear. That's why they wanted it. That's why Colonel Moreau urgently pleaded, let's pull back to connect with the Colonel Biddle's brigade on East McPherson's Ridge. But they're going to be told to hold their position on West McPherson's Ridge the wood line.
Guess that kind of makes a little sense because you kind of use the Iron Brigade as bait, and then you slap them with Biddle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us about the fighting in the woods.
Well, like I said, the 26th North Carolina and the 11th North Carolina will come forward, and they're essentially going to battle the 24th Michigan and the 19th Indiana.
Okay.
Colonel John Brockenbrough and his boys are going to keep those 2 regiments from Wisconsin busy, the 7th and the 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a contest between the 26th, the 11th, and the 2 Union regiments of the Iron Brigade, the 24th and the 19th Indiana. And eventually what's going to take place is the 11th North Carolina will completely outflank the 19th Indiana on their left.
Okay.
As the 26th North Carolina keeps the fire on their front. Now, amazing enough, at the time, as I said earlier, you could see all the way to Hers Ridge. And even before the 26th North Carolina crosses Willoughby's Run, they lose 4 color bearers. So it goes to show you that that ground was all open, and they were clearly able to see the North Carolinians as they came.
So you go there today, you stand on the road, you stand at the 24th Michigan's Monument, wherever, and you look down into the Willoughby Run Valley, and it's all wooded.
It's all wooded.
Right. Like, especially this time of year,
Absolutely.
You can't see shit.
You can't see anything,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good 200 plus yards to the west, Willoughby's Run.
Yeah. Now, we always talk about how McPherson's Woods was devoid or denuded, if you will, of undergrowth because of the farm animals
Right.
and everything grazing in there.
Right.
There was a quarry down the hill a
Right.
bit. So there's activity in these woods prior to the battle that
Right.
might, make it so that there's nothing really obstructing you except for some tree trunks, which
Yeah,
you could look through
tree-
and still see.
For the better part, these men could see one another at several hundred yards quite easily.
So my question is, the tree line's end today,
Yeah.
is that further across the creek than it would have been back then? Where, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. How did it look at the time of the battle? We don't even know if the tree line where Reynolds Death Site Memorial rests today, if that's
that
the actual tree
right?
line at the time of the battle.
Well, it makes
sense.
sense.
It could have been further forward. It could have been further back. We don't know.
But it makes sense, though, that it is there because any idiot who's sitting on a horse on a mound
Right.
is,
Deserves to be shot, right?
I wouldn't say deserves, but yeah.
But,
No, we
I mean,
know that he wasn't sitting on the horse on the mound. The mound was made for the
The
monument.
Confederates, as they began to cross Willoughby's Run, did talk about the fact that the banks on both sides were heavily studded with brush.
Okay.
And that they would use that brush to pull themselves up the banks
Oh.
to cross over Willoughby's
So,
Run.
okay,
So there was brush along both banks of Willoughby's Run,
but maybe not trees.
but not necessarily dense tree line.
right. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a moot point.
And
but-
obviously, like I said, they must have seen him because 4 color bearers are taken down before they even cross Willoughby.
so, is there a skirmish line deployed,
At this point, that's a good question.
or do you not need one if you could see them
I
coming?
don't think at this point they have a skirmish line forward. They can see what's coming at them. Skirmish line is sent forward to detect an enemy approach, so there's no sneak attack.
Right.
They know what's coming at them.
Right,
So
right.
I'm not sure they had a skirmish line to their front. Probably not.
Because they're looking from ridge to ridge. So
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
Okay.
So
So,
now the Confederates, the 26th North Carolina, the 11th North Carolina, they're crossing Willoughby's Run. They're making their way up the slope towards West McPherson's Ridge. And by the time they get to the top of that slope, the 26th North Carolina is going to lose 14 color bearers. 14 color bearers, including their commanding officer, a young Colonel Henry King Burgoyne. He picked up the fallen flag at one point, only to be mortally wounded. So 14 color bearers would fall, either killed or wounded in battle.
this part of the battle is so hard for me to imagine because just the size of the 26th and 11th
Yeah.
against 2 regiments, the
Right.
24th and 19th.
Right.
The size of those Confederate regiments, I don't understand how they weren't completely wiped out.
Yeah.
So there's got to be something, and we've talked about this on the show before. There's got to be something that it's either you can't see because of all the smoke, right? So you're just shooting, right? Or maybe there's a part of you that's kind of, you don't want to
Well,
hit someone. I don't know.
How about this point?
Yeah.
Both the 24th Michigan and the 26th North Carolina are relatively new regiments to both armies.
Okay.
Remember, 24th Michigan has not seen heavy combat to this point.
Yeah.
They're still looking to prove themselves to those men from Wisconsin and Indiana.
Right.
And the 26th North Carolina, who had been part of the Army of Northern Virginia for the Peninsula Campaign, afterward had been transferred towards the North Carolina coast to counter Burnside's expedition along the North Carolina coast. So they had been detached for a while. Only for the Gettysburg campaign was that brigade and the 26th North Carolina formed and returned to the Army of Northern Virginia. So the 26th North Carolina, do they have something to prove also?
Yeah.
Sometimes you have these regiments, these relatively green regiments, they just don't know when it's time
To quit.
to pull back. Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't know. They're stubborn. They don't know when it's quite time. The time to pull back
Wow.
from an untenable position.
Now, the 26th North Carolina took a tremendous amount of casualties as well.
They lose 588 of their
Which is-
840 men in about, at best, 40 minutes of combat. At best. I'm being generous.
So you're saying that the bulk of those casualties were from the first day.
Right.
Not on the third
When
day
they went
and
into the
first day.
charge for Pickett's charge, they had about 216 men.
Oh my God!
That's all they had left. 216 men.
Just imagine that. Like these guys. You're almost a full-size regiment, right? I guess they were in garrison duty. Is that what it was?
Well, they were keeping an eye on Burnside on the North Carolina coast, over in the area of New Bern.
Okay.
There were several battles, but Burnside eventually drove the Confederates back. They were able to take a couple of Roanoke Island and those different islands on the North Carolina coast.
But either way, they didn't really take huge casualties, whatever they were in. I mean,
they're still strong.
Down.
Yeah, they're still close to 900 men here for the Battle of Gettysburg.
You gonna say something, Court?
Just that one of Burnside's objectives in North Carolina was to destroy an important railroad, and once that fell, it was any resistance at that point was not really strategic. It was let's get them to where they can do some damage.
Yeah. I mean, if it were up to Lee, he would pull all the Confederate troops off the coastline from North Carolina to South Carolina to Georgia and have them attached to the Army of Northern Virginia for the Gettysburg campaign.
Oh.
For the Gettysburg campaign. Okay?
Yeah, well, that would have made
Because remember,
might have helped.
What's his objective for the Gettysburg campaign? Inflict that decisive defeat on the Union forces in northern soil.
So he needs a
to
bigger
achieve
army.
Southern independence. Yeah. So he needs all the troops that he can get.
Yeah. I wonder what would have happened if he had gotten all the troops he wanted.
It might have been, there's a lot of what ifs.
Yeah.
A lot of what ifs.
I think he still would have lost. So, if not the battle of the war, I think, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, so, okay, that's interesting that they sustained those woods had to be a mess.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
As the Confederates are coming forward, they're talking about literally stepping over the bodies of the dead and the wounded.
It had to be slick with blood.
And as they're battling in that woodlot, General Pettigrew is going to turn to one of his staff officers. He says, go find Colonel Burgoyne and tell him his men have covered themselves in glory. So imagine a staff officer having to ride up through that woodline, his horse stepping over bodies to deliver that message. And he eventually does and is immediately shot down, dead.
And what a stupid message to die over.
Yeah,
you could have waited.
You covered yourself in glory. Yeah.
And they covered the ground in their men. So, but the 24th Michigan is taking it too.
Yeah, they're going to lose 363 of their 467 men.
So, but here's what I'm trying to wrap my head around.
Yeah,
my big beautiful bald head. I'm trying to get this here. They've got 800 something, almost 900 men. The 11th North Carolina has
over 500.
Over 500. Okay, so right there, you're looking 1,500 men.
Yeah.
Okay. The 24th and the 19th. They're what? 800?
Well, the 19th Indiana is 308.
Yeah.
And the 24th Michigan
is
467.
So 800 something men.
Some odd men.
Right?
Almost double the force is coming upon them.
Right.
Almost double.
But they're inflicting what I'm asking you is this: was the 26th engaged with any other regiment besides those two? Or mainly the 24th?
No, that's who they're going to be engaged with.
The
24th Michigan and the 19th Indiana.
See, and that's the thing that a civilian who's never been in combat will never understand is how that can happen. When I hear those numbers, I think I know who's going to win this.
Yeah.
And I know who's going to inflict more pain.
You may have very well had some of the soldiers of the 2nd Wisconsin firing to their left oblique.
Okay.
Into the flank of the 26th as they're coming forward.
Okay.
Because remember, Colonel John Brockenbrough, he performs a very weak attack alongside the North Carolinians. He's coming forward, and the first thing he has to do, he has to shift to the south to avoid that rock quarry.
Yeah,
which just pushes the North Carolina Brigade further to the south. Okay? And it sets up the encounter with the 26th and the 11th versus the 24th Michigan and the 19th Indiana.
I see.
Okay, but very well, the 7th Wisconsin could have been delivering fire to their left oblique. If they're not being strongly entertained by the men from Virginia.
Amazing to me.
Yeah.
Though. Okay, so continue then with the story.
So what's going to eventually happen? The 26th North Carolina will make their all the way up to the line of the 24th Michigan, and you know where their regimental monuments rest today.
Sure.
Okay. Many of the soldiers in the 24th Michigan wrote that we fought at times at 20 paces. Well, pace off the distance between those two monuments today.
We did that.
That's about 20 paces.
We 6 questions. Lentz and I did that one time, and at first we thought it was 20 steps, and then we looked it up and we found out it's not. And so then we redid it, and it's very close.
Very close.
It's
very close.
I don't know how you miss.
Yeah, you don't. You don't. That's what.
Well, and that's why the casualties are that way.
24th Michigan will lose 9 color bearers.
Oh.
19th Indiana is going to lose 68% of their 308 men because they're going to be struck on front by the 26th North Carolina, probably their right wing, whereas their left wing is being struck by the 11th North Carolina, and the North Carolinians are making around the left flank of the 19th Indiana. And the Iron Brigade is going to collapse from left to right as their left flank is uncovered. Because once the 19th Indiana gives way, what does that do? That exposes the left flank of the 24th Michigan and right down the line.
And the 19th is like a bowl.
Yeah,
like,
down in
it's
that little
just-
hole.
when you-
Yeah.
when you
And part of
stand
it,
there, it's
and
like-
a good part of their command extends into the wheat field to the south.
Okay.
Keep that in mind. But still, they are far outflanked on their left by the 11th North Carolina.
So they start to crumble.
Yeah.
And fall back.
Right.
Is it a fallback or is it
Well,
organized?
it's said that the 24th Michigan in particular fought a fighting retreat. Colonel Henry Moreau at time is going to have his men loading as they move to the rear, stop, turn about, and fire upon their Confederate pursuers. But the Confederates did write that we chased them from tree to tree as we drove them through the Herbst Woods.
So they didn't give those woods up easily.
No.
At all.
No, not at all. They paid for it in their blood. Though.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
And so where do they go from here?
Well, they're going to eventually exit the Herbst Woods, and as they do so, who's waiting for them on the other side? The 155th 1st Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
They had finally been sent forward by General Doubleday to cover the gap between Colonel Chapman Biddle and his right and the left of the Iron Brigade. Yeah.
But the Iron Brigade thought they were their relief.
They did, and they just marched past them.
Yeah.
And Colonel McFarland would write, as the Iron Brigade marched past them, we were left singly and alone to battle now the 26th North Carolina.
Now, but
coming directly
the
at them.
155th is a pretty large regiment, too.
151st.
151st, excuse me.
Yeah, they're good size. They're close to 500 men.
Yeah.
long. Yeah.
So, okay, that's,
Yeah, but
that's
they're
a pretty
they're-
good
they're-
slowing force.
Keep in mind, they're a 9-month regiment.
Right,
This
and a
is
lot
their
of these
first
guys...
and only battle. Yeah, first and only battle. Really true test.
First and only, and also, what was the other thing that a lot of them were supposed to? Were their enlistments up already?
In 3 weeks.
The end of,
Or in 3
the
weeks.
end of the month.
Yeah.
Yeah, the end of the month. Yeah.
And so it's like
They're going to take terrible
you're so
casualties.
close. You're so close.
Here it is. The poor 151st, the Iron Brigade, the 24th Michigan just marches directly past him, heading towards Seminary Ridge. The 151st is left there all by themselves. And this is a green 9-month regiment. Colonel McFarland would tell his men, boys, take clear aim and fire and be steady. Yeah. Be steady.
they were.
Be steady when it's your first real combat. Yeah.
Yeah. But they did do a good
They
job.
did do well. But just like the 19th Indiana was outflanked on their left by the 11th North Carolina, the same's going to happen to the 151st.
But so what's Biddle doing though? When
Well, Biddle is already entertained by the other two regiments. The 47th and the 52nd are
They're down
attacking
that
his
way.
other three regiments, the 121st, the 80th New York, and the 142nd. And just like the Iron Brigade, the 121st is going to be completely outflanked on their left, and they give way from left to right. First, the 121st gives way under a crushing flank fire. Then the 80th New York has to give way, and then finally the 142nd. So they're all giving way and as the 151st is battling the 26th and elements of the 11th North Carolina. Yeah. And eventually, of course, they're going to have to pull back.
Is there? Do they do any fighting at the seminary?
They do.
On that line too.
The remnants of the Iron Brigade, along with 2 regiments of Colonel Roy Stone, that's the 150th and the 149th, along with the remnants of Colonel Chapman Biddle, will reform on Seminary Ridge. That breastwork that had been built by General Gabriel Paul, that brigade from the 2nd Division of the 1st Corps. So that's where they're going to rally. Okay, they're going to take up, maybe 400 yards of front, but they don't have a lot of men. There's not much left of those three brigades. There's really not.
Then they are placed on Culp's Hill.
Well, what's going to happen is we're going to have General Dorsey Pender. He's going to relieve.
Oh, right. Sorry.
He's going to relieve. He'll relieve Pettigrew's brigade. So it's eventually going to be Pender's division that comes forward
So
to relieve
fresh
Pettigrew.
division.
Yeah. So we'll have General Alfred Scales and his North Carolinians, and Colonel Abner Perrin with his South Carolinians. They will assault Seminary Ridge, and just like's been happening on all day, the 121st, who's the regiment furthest to the south, they will completely be outflanked by the 1st South Carolina, and now the whole line gives way on Seminary Ridge, and now there's a full retreat back to Cemetery Hill. Yeah.
So they get back to Cemetery Hill. They're placed Culp's Hill.
Right. Yeah. General Hancock will order General Wadsworth, get your division to Culp's Hill. So Cutler's Brigade and the Iron Brigade will move to Culp's Hill.
Now, some of Wadsworth's men help on the 2nd and the 3rd, right? Or just the 2nd?
It's the second. Second.
With Green's Brigade.
Right. That's right.
Any of the Iron Brigade units?
And, well, what had happened on Culp's Hill with the fighting that took place, the one lone regiment that's in position on the lower part of the hill.
Yeah.
Okay, the 137th New York under command of Colonel David Ireland. Unfortunately, he's only got about 425 men under his command. They cannot occupy all of the constructed breastwork line all the way down to the base of the hill. And eventually, the Confederates will discover those unoccupied breastworks, and they'll take advantage of it. They'll occupy them, and then they'll come out of that breastwork, and they're going to change front facing the right flank of the 137th New York, delivering a crushing volley into their right flank. At the same time, we've got the 37th Virginia, I think it is. They're attacking them on front. So we got the 37th attacking them on front, the 23rd attacking on flank, and the 10th Virginia is going to use a stone wall to get to the rear of the 137th. They've got to give way. They pull back. They begin to pull back to the upper hill behind the famous traverse that Greene had instructed his men to construct between lower and upper Culp's Hill. And remember, at one point, what had taken place, as soon as the Confederate division of Johnson attacked, immediately Greene sent a courier to General Wadsworth. I need reinforcements. Can you send me reinforcements? Now, Wadsworth's got to hesitate because for all he knows, the Confederates will attack his front on the western side of Culp's Hill. Okay, so he's got to wait a little bit of time. But eventually he sees that the Confederates are not attacking his front. He's going to direct 2 of his regiments over to the other side of the hill, and that's going to be the 6th Wisconsin and the 84th New York, the 14th Brooklyn, the 2 regiments that have that war of words over the railroad cut after the war. Yeah. So as the 137th is pulling back to the traverse, we've got the 6th Wisconsin and the 137th making their charge towards the very traverse. Okay, the 10th Virginia is right on the hill.
Once again, saving the day.
Right, the 10th Virginia is right on the heels of the 137th, but as they climb over the breastwork to traverse, who's there to fire into the advancing 10th Virginia? The 6th Wisconsin and the 84th New York. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's, I'm reading a book now. They talk about contingencies. What would have happened if this didn't take place and that didn't take place? You can talk about that all day at
Yeah.
the Battle of Gettysburg. The contingencies that determine the ultimate defeat or success here at the
It
Battle
does
of
have a
Gettysburg.
lot of close calls
It does.
that are like,
It does.
just in the nick of time type of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Um,
So by the end of the day, okay, on July 1st, the bulk of the losses of the Iron Brigade will be on day one. Of course, oftentimes they did not separate the casualties by day.
Right.
Oftentimes you don't know the difference in casualties by day. So of the 1,153 casualties that the Iron Brigade suffers overall at the Battle of Gettysburg, I'm going to say maybe as many as 1,100 are on day one alone.
Yeah,
you know,
it
the
would have to be.
vast majority, the vast bulk is on day one.
because July 3rd, not much fighting or no fighting.
No, not really much fighting at all for the Iron Brigade.
Yeah. Okay. So that, God, I just can't imagine.
Yeah.
You know, so it's got to be between the woods and the seminary, right, where all those casualties took place, and then of course maybe the missing were on the retreat or something, or I don't know.
Yeah, got lost in
But
the streets.
just day
died
one.
yeah. Just day one.
Day one.
Overall, day
Yeah.
one is where they suffered the vast majority, probably over 85 to 90% of the casualties on day one.
It's just so unfathomable to
Yeah.
think you get up in the morning with 1,800 of your
1,829,
closest
yeah,
buddies.
yeah. By the end of the day, you're
There's-
burying your closest
Oh my
buddies.
God, over 1,000 of them.
Yeah, and it's no different with the 26th North
No,
Carolina.
of course not.
I mean, they had 6 sets of twins within the regiment. 5 did not survive the battle.
5 sets.
5 sets did not survive
Jesus.
the battle. They had, in one company alone, 52 soldiers with the same surname. Most did not survive the battle. So terrible losses in the 26th North Carolina, inflicting the damage upon the Iron Brigade. Yeah,
That
that's an
is,
absolute slugfest in the Herbst Woods. You want to talk a bloody piece of ground, right there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we talk about the wheat field, of course.
Yeah.
You know, and the fields, you know, that field's a picker's charge, but boy, that wood line, Herbst Woods,
No,
a real bloodbath.
you know, you're right. You're always hearing about any other part of
Yeah,
the battle,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But no, not really there. But
Yeah.
And
I mean,
especially for its size.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
That's what I'm having the hardest time with. 1,000 plus.
Yeah.
Or
Well, the casualties
roughly.
on day one outnumbered the total casualties on day 3. Day 2 is, of course, the heaviest day of casualties.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
But
see what
day
you're saying.
1
Yeah.
outnumbers day 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still, day 1 somewhat gets the short shrift of the story. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm thinking, and is what a shame that is,
Yeah.
because that is really like that. People just kind of,
Well,
myself
I always
included, would
say,
just drive through those woods.
Although they lost the battle on day 1, I mean, they lost the day. I think that's where they won the battle. Because eventually, what are they going to do? They're going to take possession of that high ground stuff. You know?
Yeah.
And it's going to be over the next 2 days, July 2nd and July 3rd, where Lee's army's going to attempt to drive them from that high ground. I'm not talking about Sickles, of course, with his movement forward, but Culp's Hill, Cemetery Ridge, and the Round Tops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, that is the Iron Brigade at Gettysburg. Now, what we're going to do is, first of all, Elaine McLaughlin said, simply say thanks to Larry for all he does for the Gettysburg community.
Thank you, Elaine. I
Yes,
appreciate that.
yes.
Yeah, that's
And,
nice to think of that.
She speaks for many of us, Larry. She speaks for
Well,
many
thank
of us.
you.
Okay. Oh, actually, somebody that was on your tour this morning
Uh-oh.
is in there.
Uh-oh. one of the officers who I took around the field then, huh?
Probably. Yes, sir. Okay, so here's what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to call in and ask a question, or even if you have a thought, analysis, whatever you want.
Comment,
You want to
feedback.
share with us, with Larry.
Point out my mistakes.
Point out his mistakes, correct him on whatever you want. The number is 717-420-1978. Get in the queue during the commercial break, and we're going to take that now.
Oh, good.
So we'll be right back after these exciting words with our questions from patrons and you. Thank you.
While we're in commercial, you should get in the phone queue. Call 717-420-1978 to ask a Gettysburg guide. We'll be right back.
The minstrel boy to war has gone. In the ranks of death you will find him. His father's sword he hath girded on, and his wild heart slung behind him. Land of song said the war.
The Gettysburg Museum of History, located right here in the center of Gettysburg, PA. Owner and curator Eric Dorr grew up here and has spent his life collecting and preserving history through artifacts ranging from the Civil War, the Battle of Gettysburg, World War II, presidential items, pop culture, and more. His museum is free and open to visitors Wednesday through Sunday, 11 to 5 p.m., where you can stop by and immerse yourself in some of the most amazing artifacts that you would never believe exist in the middle of Gettysburg. If you're a fan of Band of Brothers and Everything Easy Company, you'll love his exhibit featuring the Dick Winters collection and artifacts from D-Day. You can even own your own piece of history by buying one of the many relics they have for sale in the museum and on the website gettysburgmuseumofhistory.com. The Gettysburg Museum of History is a non-profit 501c3 organization with a foundation that allows all purchases and donations to keep the museum operating and open free of charge. They have been featured on the History Channel, the Travel Channel, the Smithsonian Channel, and the Science Channel. Now you can check them out on American Artifact, the series on the YouTube channel, The History Underground. So that's the Gettysburg Museum of History at 219 Baltimore Street or the gettysburgmuseumofhistory.com.
If you like this podcast and what we're doing here, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much.
Charge take?
That's another great question.
Who can forget the sounds of the 60s?
The 1860s. I can't, and you can't either. Now, there's Marching Through Georgia, the exciting new album by Billy Webster. All of your favorite hits of the 1860s in one place. Such hits as Gary Owens, The Battle Hymn of the Republic, All Quiet Along the Potomac Tonight, Marching Through Georgia, and much, much more. So what are you waiting for? Go to billysongs.com and order your digital download of Billy Webster's Marching Through Georgia today. That's billysongs.com. Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center, Gettysburg's premier museum, is housed in the historic Lutheran Seminary building constructed in 1832, a witness to the first day of battle. The museum's 3 floors of exhibits connect visitors to the dilemmas that led to the Civil War, provide a powerful and personal view of the battle's first day, and explore one of the battlefield's largest hospitals. No visit to Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center is complete without a guided tour of the building's famous cupola, where on the eve of battle, officers and civilians saw thousands of Confederate soldiers' campfires burning to the west, and Brigadier General John Buford watched for vital federal reinforcements as fighting erupted on the morning of July 1st. Today, you can stand where Buford stood and discover how this view helped chart the course of the Battle of Gettysburg. Your trip to Gettysburg is not complete without a serious visit to Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center, Gettysburg's premier museum. Purchase tickets online at seminaryridgemuseum.org or call 717-339-1300. To get tickets or a cupola tour, listeners may call or walk in and mention Addressing Gettysburg, or by ordering online using the promo code AG1863 for 20% off. Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center. It began here.
There's a devil to pay.
When you're dragging ass out of bed and the hair's mussed up on your head, you picture the 20th Maine and you're happy once again. Fight the battle against being slow with little ground top, bro.
When you're dragging ass out of bed, the hair's mussed up on your head. You picture the 20th Maine, and you're happy once again. Fight the battle against being slow with Little Ground Top Bro.
Addressing Gettysburg's Little Ground Top by Bantam Roasters is available at 82 Steinware Avenue in Gettysburg or at addressinggettysburg.com/cafe.
Hey, Larry, you know who my heroes are?
Who?
William Ryan Hart Jr.
How much?
Paul, what?
How much money did they give you?
Well, I'll tell you in a second.
Okay.
Paul LaGreca Jr.
Okay.
Dustin Wise, Kevin Tracy, Matthew Gillespie, and Project Past, our friend James Cosgrove over there, Project Past. They've donated to DH Pioneers, Digital History Pioneers Foundation, the foundation created to support Addressing Gettysburg and all of our production needs. And combined, they've brought us in just over a month, a whopping $25 million.
$25 million. Wow. That's a hell of a check that they wrote.
No, this is about $930, but I appreciate it.
It's $934 in your pocket.
Damn right it is.
Yeah.
Damn right. And let me tell you, Larry, in case you feel like donating some money to somebody.
Not Matt's pocket. It's a nonprofit.
Yeah, it's right. It doesn't
Yeah.
go to my pocket.
Yeah.
I mean, it eventually goes to everybody else's pocket so that I can make videos.
Yeah.
At Digital History Pioneers Foundation, we are about grassroots history on digital platforms. That means we are about podcasters, documentarians, YouTubers, and even ticking talkers. All of these creators are out there trying to share their love of history with the public. They don't need ideas, ladies and gentlemen. They're full of ideas and other things. They need funding, both from viewers like you and corporate donors. So DH Pioneers' initial funding focuses on the Civil War with a special emphasis on the Addressing Gettysburg podcast. To be a part of this unique content, go to dhpioneers.com. Digital History Pioneers is an IRS Section 501c3 approved charitable corporation that makes any donation tax deductible at a full set of the law.
Hey, the studio line costs us money, so use it. Call 717-420-1978 to join the discussion, ask a question, or whatever. Just stop us from wasting money on the damn phone line. Oh, we're back.
That was an old one from AG Today. I thought that was yours. Sorry, Court. You got.
I got the day one treatment.
You got the day one treatment, indeed.
Yeah.
All right, we're back.
Okay.
Oh boy. All right, Larry.
I'm ready.
We've got some questions. We've got some people who've been sitting on the phone lines on hold for forever and a day. So let me get to them here. There we go. This person has been on for a whole 7 minutes.
Wow.
6 questions, Lentz. You're on the air.
Hello, guys. How are you doing?
Good.
Hey,
How are
Michael.
you?
Doing great. I just have a question about the 6th Wisconsin and the afternoon fight there on July 1st. When you mentioned the Iron Brigade regiments, they're missing from the Herbst Woodlot. Where are they, and why are they not with the rest of the brigade?
Simple answer. When the Iron Brigade deployed for battle to go into the Herbst Woods, the 6th Wisconsin would be kept in reserve near the seminary buildings. Oftentimes, when a division went into action, one of the regiments would be placed in reserve should an emergency arise or should an opportunity arise that this regiment in reserve could exploit. So that's where the 6th in Wisconsin will be. Eventually, when the other regiments of the Iron Brigade battle in Herbst Woods, eventually the 6th Wisconsin will be called to retrieve the fortunes of the Union forces to the north side of the Chambersburg Pike, specifically the route of General Lysander Cutler and his New York and Pennsylvania brigade. So they will be directed to the north, cross the Chambersburg Pike, and then eventually charge upon those Mississippi and North Carolinians who eventually would take position down in the railroad cut. And eventually the 6th Wisconsin, with 2 New York regiments, the 95th and the 84th, will charge upon the cut and retrieve the fortunes of the Union forces on the north side of the Chambersburg Pike, capturing as many as 230 North Carolina and mostly Mississippi soldiers. After the morning engagement, the 6th Wisconsin will not return to the brigade front around the breastwork line on the south side of the Chambersburg Pike. They will stay to the north side of the Chambersburg Pike. They will be in the area in support of Lieutenant Stewart and his Battery B. That's those guns just to the west of where General Robert E. Lee's headquarters rest today. So that's why they are not meant. That's why you don't hear about them in the Herbst Woods fight.
Anything else, Michael?
Yeah. And I think also here, too, even though it's not really mentioned, is that Lysander Cutler had been the commander of the 6th Wisconsin.
Yes.
So there's already that relationship with Cutler's brigade that they're connected to. And Cutler's brigade suffered some pretty heavy casualties as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So they just kind of shifted over to support 4B and also extend the line of Cutler's brigade. I think because they had those prior relationships.
Right. Cutler was at one time the commander of the Iron Brigade before General John Gibbon had taken command. So he was a temporary commander of the Iron Brigade, moved up from regimental command of the 6th Wisconsin. So he does have that relationship with the men of the Iron Brigade, absolutely.
And thanks for proving that you haven't been hanging on our every word from the very beginning, Mike. Got him. Right,
well,
Court?
no, hold.
Got him.
Go ahead, Mike. What?
What's that?
No, we're saying got him.
No. Well, I have been. I said he was in command of the 6th Wisconsin, not the Iron Brigade. So, yes, 6th Wisconsin.
Yeah,
so
we also
there's
said
a
that.
famous story.
But we had mentioned early in the
Both.
broadcast how the 6th Wisconsin was held in reserve around the seminary buildings rather than following their sister regiments into the Herbst Woods to battle the Tennesseans and Alabamians. Yeah.
Yeah, and my question was, where were they in the afternoon? Where were they in the afternoon, not the morning?
The afternoon, as I said.
The afternoon.
Who are you yelling at?
In the afternoon, they're going to be stationed to the north side of the Chambersburg Pike in support of Lieutenant Stewart and his battery. They will not.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes. 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 No. I've been on hold for an hour and a half, so I've been listening to the whole thing. I can tell you, I've been hanging on your words quite literally. So yes.
All right, Mike. Thank you. Thank you for the super chats and thank you for the call.
guys.
You too.
Yeah,
you
Mike.
too. Bye, Mike.
Mike, thanks for the question.
It's the great Michael 6 questions. Lentz there. Let's talk to.
I know Mike. He's a member of our roundtable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. Let's talk to Steven. You're on the air, Steven, sir.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Oh, is this the great Stephen Lunsford?
It sure is. It sure is.
My next guest would have been Stephen Baldwin, but I don't think he listens to the show.
No.
Steve Lunsford has some fantastic books. Called, they're Order of Battle books. Every corps. I'll show them on the way out. I have them in the bookshelf there. He's working on A&V now. He has Army of the Potomac. I highly recommend you get them, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, go ahead.
I'll have to check him out on
that. As a matter of fact, I'm editing my Confederate books as I'm listening to this episode. So,
good.
Work in progress.
Get them out already.
Yeah.
But, yes. But, hey, first of all, I just got to say, Larry, just fantastic job, sir. You are doing wonderful.
Yes. I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. And please, if I made any mistakes, point them out to me. But thank you very much.
No. Well, thank you. And so I have a comment and a question. And,
absolutely.
And my comment is, I appreciate you giving a shout out too about their involvement, Iron Brigade's involvement on Culp's Hill. And personally, for me, one of my favorite corners in the battlefield is, and you can call me biased, but I love the Stevens Knoll area.
Okay.
And I just love that corner between East Cemetery Hill and Culp Hill. There's a beautiful view out that direction in that valley below.
Yeah.
But I remember.
I know what you mean.
You know what's interesting about that?
I remember one of my.
Go ahead, Steve.
Sorry. No, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say what's interesting about the Stevens Knoll position is that who's to their front but the men of the Iron Brigade that had been sent over there to man that position. And we have to wonder, as Colonel Isaac Avery and his North Carolinians charged through that field towards East Cemetery Hill, did the men of the Iron Brigade deliver volleys upon their advance?
I mean,
it's a good question.
I was going to ask you that. They had to have,
I would think they would have. The only problem, though, it was already dark.
Yeah,
so
but you got height.
If they're firing, they're firing at indistinct figures as they're crossing their front.
Sure.
Plus, of course, you have the smoke of battle, which would have further obscured their view of the Confederate infantry as they're coming forward.
But they're on heights above them.
And they're firing,
you know what I mean?
Down.
And it's just you just kind of just lob them. They'll hit a Confederate somewhere.
That's probably just towards the outside of their range of the rifled musket, probably about 300 to 400 yards. So you have to wonder about that. Did they?
Yeah.
Did the 24th Michigan? Did the Indiana boys? Did the Wisconsin boys fire upon Isaac Avery, particularly the left flank regiment, the 57th North Carolina?
I would have,
as opposed to the other ones. I would think they did.
Yeah.
But we don't really have much of an account of their action as Avery's brigade attacked East Cemetery Hill.
Hey, the other interesting thing, and maybe this is what Stephen was going to say too, is that their breastworks are still there, and you can walk amongst them, and they have secondary markers there. So you
all
can
but the 19th Indiana, they don't have one.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Phil Spaggy, he's trying to lobby to get brigade regimental markers, flank markers for the 19th Indiana. But
good luck with that.
The other regiments are up there. Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Stephen. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve. You have a question?
Oh, sorry. No, I'm getting. Yeah, you got to the point. I highly encourage visitors to go follow that foot trail there because I always look at it this way. I mean, they're secondary markers, but they're very sobering at the same time, especially when you see like the 24th Michigan marker where it says the 99 survivors rallied here.
Yeah, their flank markers are much closer together on the evening of the second. Yeah, because that's all they've got at the end of the day. Hey, barely muster 999 men. Yeah, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
So my question there then is, given these staggering statistics, I mean, it's insane. But do you have any particular human interest story to share of the cost of the home front for this? I mean, because you could talk about some of these communities that may have been devastated by this.
Well, I'll say this. When the 24th Michigan was raised in the area of Detroit, Michigan, and they received their battle flag, they pledged their lives to protect that battle flag and that it would never hit the ground. And they will do that on day one, despite appalling losses and the loss of 9 color bearers. So the people back home, obviously, are eventually going to get the casualty figures. They'll see the newspaper accounts of the number of dead and wounded of the Iron Brigade. And I can imagine, though, many of them were proud of their boys. They never lost that flag.
Yeah.
They never lost that flag. Yeah.
It's really, we did an episode with Deb Novotny about flag bearers, and I'm fascinated by that whole phenomenon of flags, because I think the modern sensibility is like, why are you carrying a flag? Why aren't you carrying a gun?
Yeah,
carry a machine gun. But like it was different back then. It meant something to them.
It's a different time.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it was all a question of honor.
Yeah,
to lose your regimental flags was a dishonor.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as I said, of the 65 Medal of Honor winners at the Battle of Gettysburg, the vast majority for capturing an enemy battle flag.
Right.
The
Yeah,
Confederate
right.
battle flag.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah.
Anything else, Steve?
No, just thank you again. Thank you so much. I'm enjoying it, and I can't wait to hear the rest of it.
Good.
Thank you, Steve. I
Thanks,
appreciate
Steve.
your
Thanks
support.
for the questions. Thanks for the comments.
All right. And then let's get the last. Well, you can still call in if you want to. 717-420-1978. We got Hugh on the phone. Hugh Jass. Oh, he got me. It's Grant from Australia with his fake names.
Oh, Grant from Australia.
Have you ever met an Australian?
Is he calling collect?
He better not be. Have you ever met an Australian?
I've taken Australians over the battlefield.
Well, you'll never forget this one. This is a unique Australian.
And am I one of his mates right away?
Hopefully.
Okay.
Hopefully. He puts Crocodile Dundee
Yeah.
and Steve Irwin to shame.
He carries a bigger knife, huh?
He does.
He does.
He
okay.
does. Grant, what's going on, sir?
How are you, Matthew?
Yeah, very fine. Grantley?
Pretty good idea, this whole live Ask A Guide. I think it's pretty successful. Good on you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm very surprised, actually.
Yeah, I'm thrilled that I got to lead the first one.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You're the cherry breaker.
Yeah, I'm the guinea pig.
And
don't make that noise after I said that. Jeez. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Graham.
Larry, thanks for putting up with old stuffy Matt for 2 hours.
Oh,
You've
that's
done a great
okay.
job.
That's okay.
You've told a good story. I think we've all learnt a lot. I think all the comments were positive. Any negativity was aimed at Matt, so you're good.
Oh, okay. That's good. That's good to hear. He's taking all the fire.
Okay. I'll move on to. I've got two questions.
Sure,
the
go
first
ahead.
question is, out of all the Army of the Potomac units, why do you think the Iron Brigade is like? It seems that's singled out. They're the most famous, even though after Gettysburg, they kind of got consolidated and it wasn't quite the same.
Right.
Why do you think they their name sticks out?
Well, you're absolutely right. After the Battle of Gettysburg, the Iron Brigade will never be the same. In fact, shortly after the Battle of Gettysburg, the unthinkable is going to happen. A Pennsylvania regiment, a 9-month regiment, will be added to the brigade. So they're going to lose their all-Western distinction.
Yeah.
But I don't know about the legacy and of the Iron Brigade. It's just something that grabs you with these men, these raw Western frontiersmen, these lumbermen, and that become this very solidified unit under the command of General John Gibbon.
Yeah.
And he forges them as like you would steel to make them the incredible fighting force that they are. They're going to receive their moniker, of course, as they charge up South Mountain prior to the Battle of Antietam. And none other than General George McClellan will say, "Who are those men? They must be made of iron." And the name will stick. And
do you think they're legendary because of the Battle of Gettysburg?
I think the Battle of Gettysburg just solidified the legend and the legacy of the Iron Brigade.
Well, I mean, I know they were kind of legendary in their time.
Right.
But I mean, that we remember them. Is it more for Gettysburg?
I think it's definitely more.
Yeah.
Although that cornfield has a lot to do with their legacy, also down at Antietam, where they suffered terrible losses. Yeah. You know what's amazing about the men of the Iron Brigade, and it's probably similar with many of the other regiments in both armies, is the incredible resilience of these men. The fact that they're in regiments that suffer horrific losses, they're losing their commanding officer, they're losing many of the non-coms, and yet these men continue to fight on. And they continue to fight on with the bravery and courage that they do. And not that they were not scared when they entered battle. I mean, I've got an account of one private in the ranks of the 2nd Wisconsin. As they're entering that woodlot to battle the Tennesseans, he wrote that at one point he dared not lift his head because otherwise, he said, his face would be a little bit pale. In other words, he's scared to death. And he didn't want the soldiers in the ranks to know that. But he still moved forward and performed his duty. So that's then when we think of the Iron Brigade, we think of these absolutely courageous and brave men. But remember, they were just young boys. And they had fears just like any other man, but yet they did their duty.
Yeah.
So I think, that's the legacy and the legend of the Iron Brigade. Absolutely.
Do people do their duty in Australia, Grant? Nah.
That's a loaded
Oh,
question.
of course. My duty is harassing you on this phone.
Exactly.
Which he well needs.
Anything else, Grant?
Just one last quick question. Sorry.
Sure.
I see that they had a series of commanders. Who do you think, like, after the war, when the reunions and all the veterans would gather, which of their commanders did they identify with most? Was it Gibbon or one of the others?
Well, I think the one officer who they would eventually revere the most was General John Gibbon.
Yeah,
because he forged them into the fighting force that they would
He's
become.
their daddy.
He's their daddy. He forged them into fighting force that they would become. He recognized the strength of these raw Western troops, and he was able to forge them into that fine fighting force. But, also you have your regimental commanders, Colonel Henry Moreau, of course, of the 24th Michigan, Colonel Lucius Fairchild, although he's going to lose an arm at the Battle of Gettysburg, he's still going to attend many of the reunions. So all the regimental commanders. Tragically, in 1864, Colonel Samuel Williams, who takes command of the brigade in 1864, because remember, Solomon Meredith is wounded on the afternoon of July 1st, and as he does not know, he's never going to return to command. So Colonel Samuel Williams of the 19th Indiana takes command in 1864, and he's eventually killed in battle. So, but I think it's John Gibbon as much as any of the officers. Yeah.
I'd like to thank Stephen Lunsford for donating $10 towards the budget of the Iron Brigade movie or miniseries.
Oh,
wow,
there you go.
we're almost there.
Boy, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen. Grant, is that it?
Yeah, well, sir.
What?
I think he said very well,
I said
sir.
farewell.
Oh, farewell,
sir.
farewell.
Farewell, sir.
Fare thee well to you, my friend.
And say
Fare
hello
thee well to you.
Please say hello to Down Under for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
717-420-1978 is the phone number if you want to call in. We got a few questions submitted by our patrons over at patreon.com/Addressing Gettysburg. Joseph Denise, he says, what happened to the brigade after Gettysburg? We kind of talked about that. It appears they may have been shuffled around in early 64. There's not a great deal. Just give us a little more detail on the shuffling.
Well, the Iron Brigade will remain in the First Corps initially, but of course later on in 1864, with the reorganization of the Army of the Potomac, they're going to be shifted around. Many of the men in the First Corps move over to the Fifth Corps.
Okay.
Or, the
Are they
First
moved?
Corps, the First Corps and the Third Corps are disbanded.
Right.
With that consolidation to a 3-corps structure, we just have the 2nd, we have the 5th, and we have the 6th Corps.
So are they consolidated as a brigade or just broken up piecemeal?
No, they remain a brigade.
Okay.
They remain as a brigade. They'll fight for the remainder of the war as a brigade.
And aside from that Pennsylvania regiment, are they replenished or?
Not too near the ranks that they once were, to say the least.
Okay.
But they will be somewhat replenished from recruiting efforts to bring more men into the field. You have the draftees, of course, in 1864, so maybe some of the ranks is filled up with the draftees. But eventually, let's see, the 19th Indiana, in October of 1864, they're consolidated with the 20th Indiana.
Oh, okay. Makes sense. Yeah.
20th Indiana was a 3rd Corps regiment.
Right.
Consolidated with the 19th Indiana. The 24th Michigan was actually at one point transferred north to Camp Butler in Illinois for guard duty.
Oh, really?
That's February of 1865. They'll be transferred to the north.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're going to be on guard duty. 6th Wisconsin, 7th Wisconsin fought to the end of the war. Okay, but Lieutenant Colonel Rufus Dawes, eventually becoming colonel, after his 3 years are up, he goes home. He's seen enough.
Yeah.
He's seen enough death. He's seen enough comrades that have fallen by the wayside. And maybe suffering under a little PTSD, he's had enough and he goes home. He musters out.
I don't blame him.
The 24th Michigan was also eventually selected as the honor guard for Abraham Lincoln's funeral.
Oh,
so
that's right.
They did different things as the war progressed. Yeah.
Rob Fry. I assume it's Fry. It's spelled like Glenn Fry, so I'm going to say Fry. Could be Frey.
Could be Dennis Fry,
Could be Dennis.
Dennis Fry. F-R-Y-E?
F-R-E-Y.
F-R-E-Y.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's get it from him.
All right, let's see. He says, were there any Medal of Honor recipients for their actions at Gettysburg in the Iron Brigade?
And
yes.
we know yes.
Yes, there were.
Corporal Francis Waller of the 6th Wisconsin. Yeah.
2, why was 6th Wisconsin chosen to help in the counterattack of the night of July 2nd? Yeah, was there a specific reason for that, or were
I
they
don't know
just?
if there was a specific reason why they chose both the 6th Wisconsin and the 84th New York. I just find it interesting that the 2 regiments that they did choose, that Wadsworth sent over to the west side of Culp's Hill, are going to be the 2 regiments that will have that war of words after the Battle of Gettysburg, after the war concludes. Colonel Fowler battling in the official reports with Colonel Dawes. Yeah,
but it's also the 2 regiments that kind of saved the day at the railroad cut.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
And he also wants to know: did the Iron Brigade take any part in the defense of East Cemetery Hill, or were they too far removed to do anything effective?
We talked about that. They may have very well fired upon the left flank regiment of Isaac Avery's brigade.
Yeah.
Of North Carolinians, the 57th North Carolina. Yeah.
Larry, thank you very much for doing
You're welcome,
this.
sir.
I really
You're
appreciate it. I always enjoy talking to you.
Oh,
we got one more call.
Good.
Let's take it because we want people calling in, and so we're going to take it. Tom, you're on the air, sir.
Hello, Tom.
Ground control to
Hey.
Major. Oh, there he is.
There he is.
What's going on, guys? Long time listener, never called in before, but I love the Iron Brigade, and I wanted to ask Larry a question and share a little weird minutia I have with him about the 147th New York.
Yes, go right ahead.
Yeah, so I'm actually from central New York area. So
Right.
as Gary would say, we have our pet regiments, and
Right.
the 147th, they're kind of our local guys.
Oh,
and
good.
I've been researching them now for
Okay.
Yeah, great regiment. Researching them for years, and I've been trying to pull together some of the returns and kind of all the information pre-Gettysburg. I have basically everything from July 10th to the end of the war in terms of their returns and their equipage. But I found an interesting link, and I have a theory.
Okay.
We know that the 147th, we know that the 147th wore black hats at Gettysburg, like the Iron Brigade, which is totally unlike anybody in Cutler's brigade.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I wasn't aware of that either, that they wore black hats.
Yeah. Well, we caught wind of it when we first got the returns, and then we started kind of going back and finding CDVs that we could kind of place from, before Gettysburg, and, the Chancellorsville period where you're seeing the Corps badges. But kind of our working theory is that when Cutler took command, he brought the 147th in. They were assigned to that brigade that he was forming.
Right.
And we wonder if that's kind of the connection that maybe Cutler and Gibbon and that original stealing of the, Western guys he tried to do with the 147th, because they were ruffians too.
Yeah, and of course the 147th was a relatively fresh regiment that will be added to the Army of the Potomac, and they're the largest regiment in the brigade. Unfortunately, by the time day one is done, they're going to suffer in excess of 70% casualties.
Absolutely.
I love the 147th's nickname. They were known as the Plowboys. That's what they were called.
The Plowboys.
The Plowboys. Yeah. All the regiments of the Iron Brigade, except one, had a nickname. The 6th Wisconsin was known as the Calico Boys. The 19th Indiana was known as the Swamp Hogs. So they all, Second Wisconsin was known as the Ragged Ass Second. Why? They were the oldest regiment, and apparently they had a lot of holes on their seats. So all the different regiments had a specific nickname, except for the 24th Michigan. I have not been able to find one for the 24th. But yeah, you could be proud of the Plowboys.
I like that name, the Ragged Ass.
We are. They're great, and I'll leave you with a memoir was published probably about 10 years or so ago about one of the guys in the regiment, and he wrote somewhere on the Rapidan, in 1864. So he wrote that Johnny Reb would just as soon He said Johnny Reb would just as soon march himself through the gates of hell than come up against our tar bucket hats. Thought, whoa!
I like that
cool
quote.
Piece of history.
I like that quote.
Yeah.
Very nice. Hey, thanks for the piece of information.
Well, Tom, I'm glad you called in for the first time after listening for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, good to hear
You
from
bet, Matt. Maybe I'll do it again.
Good.
Please do.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right.
Have a good night. All right. Well, listen, Larry, like I was saying.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This was really fun. I enjoyed it. I think, Court, what do you think? I think this live Ask a Guide thing is going to work.
Is great. It invites people to participate in real time, which is the key.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a little choppy at first. I was trying to get to all of the super chat. I got to figure out how to do that because they disappear after a while. So I don't want to lose them and then feel like, I gypped the people. So I don't want to do. But we'll figure it out. We'll get a couple episodes under our belt. 2 weeks. Next one. I don't know who's on it. It's on my schedule. Okay. You don't have my schedule, but we'll schedule it, ladies and gentlemen. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Thanks for listening. Larry, thank you for everything. Oh, my God. There we go. We'll talk to you later. Bye, Court.
Matt Callery, with Mikey B. Bariski, and Courtney Micker. Produced by Matt Callery and Courtney Micker. Guides appear gratis, but they would love for you to hire them for a tour on your next visit to the battlefield. To be put in touch with one, send an email to matt@addressinggettysburg.com. Thanks for watching.
Our hearts so stout have got us fame, for soon 'tis known from whence we came. Wherever we go, they tread the name of Gary Owen in glory. Instead of smile, drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail. No man for death shall go to jail from Gary Owen in glory. Instead of smile, drink down